I don't think any jury is going to look at me if I have to pull a pistol and it's on the internet and it goes, that was Morgan Lerette, a former Blackwater guy. He wrote this book. Probably be great for selling books, but I don't think a jury would look at me and say, yeah, that guy's probably of his right mind. I got the quintessential, like, joined the military story, right? Poor kid, government cheese, which is spectacular. So we went to Kuwait, the ground offensive started, and then I'm in Iraq on, like, you know, the third or fourth day of the ground offensive. It's like, that's what Blackwater is. Like, we'll be able to tell cool stories. I'm not a smart guy, but even I know that that's not, even if it does stop something, the plate's gonna hit me in the face. I'm gonna be rendered unconscious, and then I'm gonna be the guy on TV getting his head chopped off. I mean, I wish I was better at, like, just sitting down and relaxing, to be honest with you.
I mean, I noticed you're leaned pretty forward in the couch.
Well, that's because I'm in love with you.
All right. Hey, we're going to stop for a few minutes. We're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. Spent 5 years in the Air Force with SF. That's security forces. Don't get your panties in a twist. Then a couple of years in August of 04 to 05 with Blackwater, which we're going to get heavy into in terms of the book that he wrote regarding that. From 07 to 2010, he was Army Intel with Fort Lewis. Did a couple of deployments to Iraq. Then he went to college and became an IT guy, which he can't get into and is probably even more secretive than all of the shit that we're going to talk about. He's the author of Guns, Girls, and Greed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Morgan Lerette.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate you sending the book, and I also I love the fact that you threw some old school Iraqi dinar in there, which I'm curious, what is 250 dinar worth? Like 17 cents? Do you even know?
No, it's nothing. It's dead.
Not worth anything?
Yeah, it's dead money. When they recirculated the new dinars, yeah, they got rid of that. So
really, even as a like a collector's item, it's worth nothing.
You can get them on eBay for probably 17 cents. Yeah,
but pretty high dollar.
You can like tape it to like the ceiling in your bedroom so you can look at Saddam's face every time you make love. That's the plan.
So you're saying I'm on bottom all the time? The fuck? What's the last full book that you read?
Last full book that I read was probably Pig the Pug to my son, but I'm in the middle of reading The Spy and the Traitor. It's about the KGB intel with MI6 back during the Cold War, and it's absolutely fascinating.
What's it called?
It's called The Spy and the Traitor, or The Traitor and the Spy. It's one of those.
Nice. Who wrote that? Do you know?
I have no idea. It's in my backpack, but
that's good. Maybe we'll pull it out later and have some bedtime stories, or The Pig and the Pug.
I mean, Pug the Pig is probably.
The Pig.
It's once you have kids, your reading goes from like, I think I better get something educated to.
I think you get more out of the children's books half the time.
most of the time.
One thing I noticed though, there are a lot of times there are certain sentences or phrases in there that make you say like, did they really fucking put that in there? Like, it's really adult shit. Like almost, it's like that had to have been intentional. You know? You ever come across that?
Yeah, like they're talking about like Pig the Pug's penis the whole time. Like that's the whole book. It's just about his balls. It's
right?
No,
I'm reading the wrong stuff. What is the gist of the book? Now that we're talking
Pig
about
the Pug?
Yeah.
Oh, he's just a dick.
Yeah.
He's a pug and he's an asshole to the new dog. And then because he's such an asshole and he won't share his toys, he flies out the window and breaks his neck.
Is it Pig the Pug or Pug the Pig?
Pug the Pig. Wait. No.
As if he's a
Pig,
pug.
Pig the Pug.
Pig the
He's
Pug,
a pug, yeah.
Wasn't that interesting? He breaks his fucking neck.
Breaks his, well, they don't say it like that, but pretty much.
It's a pretty violent book to be reading a kid. How old is your kid that you're reading it to?
I got a 10 and an 8-year-old, so.
All right. What's your favorite quote? Do you have one?
Geez, I don't even think I have one. I'm not that pensive. I mean,
you can't just pull something out of your ass, like anything?
I mean,
Winston Churchill,
my
God.
My favorite Bible verse is, "And Jesus wept," because it's so short.
That's the one you can remember?
Yeah, that's the one I can actually recall.
Do you know what it is? What part of the Bible it's out of?
Yeah, it's the part where he cries.
No, I mean like Ephesians, whatever the fuck. I mean, you don't
absolutely
know
not.
What chapter and verse it is?
No.
If time travel were possible, where would you go and when?
Oh, I'd be right here.
Is that right?
Yeah, let's be honest. Like we are transitioning with AI coming in. We are transitioning into like an entirely different era. So I was one of those. I was born in 1980, so I grew up without the internet. Free range kid.
Yeah.
And then the internet comes in, and it just starts changing everything. If I was born 4 years later, I wouldn't be playing Oregon Trail. I would have had AOL.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting transition. And now you have AI that's coming in, and I think it's just going to be fascinating to see where it goes in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Well, so in that same vein, why not head 100 years into the future if it's possible?
Well, because the future, nobody's going to be alive by then. Let's be honest here. Like it's going to be a weird ass place.
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few decades. No doubt about it. What's something you wish you were better at?
I wish I was better at almost everything, to be honest with you. I just have that personality where when you get to one spot, it's like, oh my God, like I could do this better.
Is there one thing that stands out?
I mean, I wish I was better at like just sitting down and relaxing,
yeah,
to be honest with you.
I mean, I noticed you're leaned pretty forward in the couch.
Well, that's because I'm in love with you.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to stop for a few minutes. We're going to take a break. We're going to explore underneath the desk, and then we'll get back at it.
No, there's something about like wanting to do something, then you accomplish it, and you just want to keep doing it better and better. Like I wish I could be the guy that works at the Circle K on midnight shift, and I make like $14 an hour and be completely content
and not give a shit about it.
Yeah. But I can't sit still. It drives my wife crazy.
Yeah. Hobby wise, is there like what's the thing that you're working the hardest at that's not professionally driven?
I'm trying to get less fat. Yeah. So a lot of running.
Yeah.
I ran a ton and then got away from it for a while. So now I'm trying to get the miles back in.
All right. Do you have an EDC?
I don't even know what an EDC is.
Everyday carry. Do you carry a pistol?
No.
No.
So here's the thing. People ask me this all the time. Why don't you have a pistol in your car? I don't think any jury is going to look at me if I have to pull a pistol and it's on the internet and it goes, that was Morgan Lerette, a former Blackwater guy. He wrote this book. Probably be great for selling books, but I don't think a jury would look at me and say, yeah, that guy's probably of his right mind. But I got a Glock 40 that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
Like it.
Just keep that in the house.
Yeah. And so when I worked for Blackwater, it's the first time I ever used a Glock. And I was used to the Berettas, the M9s, the Widowmakers, and those things jam so much.
I'm surprised that they're still used at all, but
it's frightening. But those Glocks, man, you could throw those in water, pull them out, stick around in the chamber. They always fire.
Yeah. All right. So going back to your hypothetical of if you're in your car and something happens, so you would rather not let a jury dictate whether or not you should have had a gun versus not have one and have to deal with somebody either with one or some other sort of weapon or multiple attackers and just deal with them by yourself.
These are lethal weapons.
Jason Bourne over here.
Yeah. No, but
name all of the license plates in the parking lot when you walked in. Can you rattle those off?
There was a 7. I saw number 7 on
I think there was a Nebraska plate out there, maybe. Well, yeah. I mean, to me though, like, in all seriousness, that like I don't care background situation, whatever. I'd still rather have something, that's just me. But
I try to stay out of like Compton for the most part.
Do you live in California?
No, absolutely not.
All right. So it's probably not hard to stay out of Compton. Where do you live?
I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
So I try to stay up in the suburbs. There's not a whole lot of road rage or anything along those lines.
Yeah. I hear you. Do you carry anything pocket-wise other than key, wallet, cell phone?
No.
Nothing?
Nope.
Not even chapstick? Even in that dry-ass climate, not even chapstick?
Not even chapstick,
right.
I'll be honest with you.
Guys, real quick, I've recently launched Patreon for the all-inclusive mic drop experience. This goes above and beyond just ad-free. Yes, you are getting ad-free episodes, but you're getting before and after bonus footage of myself and the guest in studio, in many instances outside of the studio, doing jiu-jitsu, dog stuff, car, motorcycle, recovery, fitness, lifestyle, all kinds of different things. All the different things that I have going on are included in that Patreon page. We're releasing content multiple times a day, every single day. And I want to offer that to you guys. Just go to my Patreon page. The link is in every description or any platform that I'm on. And come enjoy that experience with me. That content is for you guys. It's what you want to see. It's about you. It's about what world you want to peek into in terms of all the different things that I have my hands in, and we're bringing that to you guys just for you. And I want to take one quick second to just say thank you to everybody who already has signed up. Without your support, we couldn't do what we do for you. So thank you to you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in there. What are the two key components for canine success? That's effective training and proper nutrition. Fueled by Team Dog brings those two components to your family and best friend. The perfect nutritional balance that results in a higher mental acuity, energy, overall vitality, and even an improved appearance. Every product you will find in my company's store was born from the battlefield and not from the boardroom. Let my life's work help you become your dog's hero. Rock and roll, naturally lubricated lips. This interview's getting even better by the second. What's your morning routine? What time do you get up, and what's the first 3 hours look like?
I'm up at 6, and then it's literally like the mad dash to get my kids ready to go to school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do this every day, and somehow every day is like an adventure.
It's like there's a surprise every morning that the same thing that's had to been gotten done the last 5 years has to get done again this morning. Yeah,
you can have cereal, you can have pancakes, you can have yogurt, and then there's like an existential crisis every morning of when they're choosing what their breakfast is going to be, and then getting them dressed, getting them out the door. So that's my first hour, and then after that, jump online for work, eat the frog. You got to eat the frog. If something's up, you got to get something done. Just do it the first thing. If you leave it, you end up, like, at the end of the day, you're dreading this thing the whole time. So eat the frog, and then usually I'll get a run in with my dogs in the early morning. Depends on the time of year in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Don't want to be out there with those poor dogs at like 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And then it's just, rinse and repeat.
Do you, or what kind of dogs do you have?
I have Labrador retrievers. Yeah.
Yep. Do your kids go to school year round?
No, but it's pretty close. They have like 2 months off, 6 weeks, 2 months off in the summer.
Yeah.
What they do is they give like 2 weeks off now, like in October and March or something. So it makes it a lot easier to have a job.
Yeah.
Since you get to watch your kids.
Yeah, that's the fucking truth. Where are you originally from, and where did you grow up?
So my dad was in the Navy, so I was born in Portsmouth, Virginia. And then we pretty much grew up in Cottonwood, Arizona, the metropolis of Cottonwood, which is really, everybody I talk to is like, man, I love Cottonwood. It's wine country. I'm like, look, wine country doesn't exist in Arizona, but Cottonwood's turned out to be a nice little place. But in the 90s, it was not exactly the place you wanted to visit.
Isn't Sedona kind of wine country? Or is it
sorta? So you have Sedona is where like the rich people are and the good restaurants, and then Cottonwood was where everybody that worked up in Sedona would live.
I got you.
Yeah.
So obviously your dad got out of the Navy then, right?
Yeah.
If you moved to Cottonwood, what? At least last I checked, there weren't any Navy bases in Cottonwood, Arizona. Maybe there are now. Who knows? Considering there's transgender theys that occupy the military, who knows what the fuck they're doing? But the family dynamic growing up, what was that like?
I mean, my dad was out of the picture pretty quick.
Oh, really?
Then, yeah. So
like he left or what?
Yeah, he decided like, doing drugs and drinking was way cooler than
really?
Being around the kids. Yeah. So I got the quintessential like joined the military story, right? Kind of poor kid, government cheese, which is spectacular. Government cheese is absolutely amazing. Yeah. It's Velveeta. I mean,
that's not cheese.
Yeah,
cheese-like product. What? How old were you when that happened?
I was probably 4, pushing 5 when my dad, skipped town.
Yeah. Did you communicate with him at all after that?
We did. He bought me my first beer, Red Dog. Remember Red Dog commercials? Yeah, I got to have a Red Dog somewhere in like 10 or 11, and then. When I was in high school, he let me know, like, don't buy drugs off of people. Buy them off of me because I can get you the good stuff.
Are you?
Yeah. No, I'm serious.
Like, no shit.
Yeah, like I'm not joking. And then tried to kind of rekindle it a little bit after, like in my 20s. And you'll have to read the story in the book, but like we got into an argument over whether or not Billy Joel was gay. And I don't know the difference between Billy Joel and Elton John. Right?
Yeah.
That's not my generation. They both just play the piano.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, Billy Joel, like he just came out as gay. And my dad was like so offended by this that he socked me in the mouth.
Really?
Yeah.
In your 20s?
Yeah, I was like 21 at the time.
Did you fight him back?
No, you don't have to. He was already missing a tooth
Yeah.
from when he got into a car accident at like 8 a.m. and got a DUI. So there was no reason for it. It didn't really hurt that much. So, but we did get into a scuffle, I think when I was 17, and I took him down to the ground and stood over him, and I was like, it's kind of, you don't want to think you can beat up your dad, and then when you realize you can at like 16, it's really all downhill from there, right? Yeah.
That's interesting. I still can't beat up my dad, actually.
See?
Yeah. He's a tough son of a bitch for sure.
If my son is watching this, that's going to be you.
Man, that's fucking wild. So you had siblings?
I did. I have an older brother. He retired from the Army as a sergeant major. And then I got a younger sister. She's a hairstylist, doing great for herself. And then I have a younger half brother because my mom got remarried. And then I have a cousin brother because my dad and his third cousin decided that they wanted to promulgate the earth with those genes. That's not a joke either. Like, cousin brother, it's great.
Is that brother a good dude? Like, do you get along with him, or is he reflective of what you may assume would be the byproduct of that relationship?
He's exactly that. Yeah. He's a.
So you guys get along great.
Yeah, I get along with everybody.
Yeah. So that dynamic in the house, having an older brother, younger sister, dad leaves when you're 4 or 5. Sounds like it was fairly tough growing up. You guys didn't have much. Did you play sports, and just, I guess, overall, how would you kind of generalize your childhood?
I mean, the cool thing about being a kid is you don't know what you don't have, right? You see the other kids that have stuff and you're kind of jealous of them, but at the end of the day, like, it was just a normal childhood. It's just my childhood. So always played sports, always played football. That was primarily just football. And then I got to high school and started wrestling. And that's kind of when I started toughening up a little bit. Yeah. Going from like that team sport where you could blame something on somebody else to like, it's just you and another dude. I mean, in a singlet, everything's out there.
Sweaty.
Yeah, sweaty, rolling on each other. But yeah, I mean, wrestling prepared me for like basic training, which was a joke. I mean, it was Air Force. Yeah. But it really gives you that mentality, like it's you versus that guy, or it's you versus the world. Yeah. So may as well be you.
Yeah. I mean, the mentality, I think, from wrestling is pretty tough to beat. Oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, swimming is kind of that same way, though, because it's such an individual thing, and it's not even like, well, yes, it's you against other individuals. You're still completely alone. Like, you can't even fucking hear anything. It's a weird sport that way. But
I did swim team a little, like for 3 years, mostly because the Speedos. Yeah. But
I was hoping you'd say because the chicks in tight swimsuits, but it was the guys' Speedos that was the draw.
Mostly just mine, yeah. And then everybody started pointing and saying how small it was, and I was like, I guess I better go into wrestling.
Yeah, where you're in an equally revealing outfit.
Well, but it covered my nipples.
Yeah, that's good. Nipple coverage is key. All right, so did anything happen growing up that was truly impactful or enough to where it shaped things for the rest of your life, something that you think about fairly often?
So my freshman year in high school, I ended up moving in with my grandparents. My grandfather was like a Dust Bowl Okie from the 30s, right? Just a tough dude. And my grades were bad. And when I moved in with him, they said, look, you're either going to get good grades and you're going to unscrew yourself and you're going to work, or you're going to go have to live with your parents over in California and sleep on like a sofa bed. So that really kind of straightened me out. Yeah. Like it was just the idea of going and living and sleeping on a sofa bed next to my brother in a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 people was like it was sobering. So my grandfather, every day after school, he's like, you're not sitting there hanging out. Like, you can do your homework after. Let's go out. We rebuild engines. We do plumbing, electrical. So all those things that are so freaking expensive to get done now are all the things that I can still do from when I worked in high school. Every summer was working construction. So it's just like that was the first transition in my life where I was like, holy crap, like this is what it means to be a normal human. You know, just get to sit there and play video games and crap.
That's huge, man, and it especially now, like there's so few family dynamics that still pass that on. You know, it's crazy. We admittedly, or I admittedly, didn't do a ton of that growing up. We lived in a suburban type of environment. There just wasn't a lot of that to be done. But even the little bit that we did, I'm thankful for. And you know, I try to teach my kids as many life skills as I can. But man, I agree. Like trying to have anything done nowadays, it's like it's hard to even find somebody that will or can do it worth a shit. And getting them to follow through on it is next to impossible, and then they charge you a small fortune. But what was the catalyst for you? Actually, before I ask you about that, going back to working with your grandpa after school and things like that, were there ever times where he whipped your ass, or did you kind of fall in line based on the circumstances fairly quick?
So he whipped my ass when I was younger, and like he was like, it must just happen where when you get older you get sweeter, right? So by the time I moved in with him in high school, like it was just sweet, like, but you just didn't mess with him, right?
Yeah.
I remember as a kid we had those jacks when you bounce the ball, grab the jacks, and my grandma's like, if you leave those on the floor and your grandpa steps on those things, it's gonna be hell to pay, right? So he was 5'8", little Irish guy, but just like he stood 12 foot tall to me.
Yeah.
But this is a spectacular, horrible story. But when I was a kid, my grandfather would babysit us when the girls would go out. And we were sitting there watching PBS, and it was back when they had like the hip surgeries and the knee surgeries all the time. So we're eating popcorn. We're watching some guy get his hip replaced. And my grandfather's like, hey, go get in the tub. I was like, all right. So he went in and did the tub and give you like 3 inches of water, and that's what you bathe in, right? Dust Bowl Okie. And it was hot as hell. So I hop in there, I try to get in, it's too hot. I come back out, I got my clothes on, I'm sitting down, I'm eating popcorn. He's like, I told you to get in the tub. And I was like, not getting in the tub, it's too hot. And he's like, oh, you're gonna get in the tub. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna get in the tub. And I don't remember what happened next, but I remember picking myself up off the floor and crawling like towards the tub and being like, I'm getting in that goddamn tub, right? So I think I was in like 3rd grade or something along those lines. So like looking back on it, you're like, well, probably wasn't the right thing to do. But
yeah.
I mean, he was just a tough dude.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, I think like with most things, there's a happy medium. You know, you can go to the extreme either direction, and unfortunately, I think that's what happens most of the time. People are either way too soft or they're way too hard, and they have a hard time getting that balance. But obviously it had an impact and was impactful enough for you to remember it and set the stage for things that are important to you. What was the catalyst that made you say, I want to join the Air Force?
So Cottonwood, Arizona, you can either work construction. I guess there's 3 options: work construction, join the military, or just like, you know, do meth. So I was like, I got to get the heck out of here. So joined the military at 19, December 1999, and it was like the perfect time, right? We hadn't been in war in a long time. They give you college. I think there was like a $3,000 signing bonus, which is why I went security forces, SF, sorry. That's why I went that instead of like going to a job that I could actually do on the outside if I didn't want to be a cop. So it was just kind of like, get me out of that situation, give me some training, give me some college money. And then September 11th happened, and it was like all bets were off at that point.
How did it change your job as a security forces guy? I mean, was it just shit was now tighter, or did it completely revamp what they were having you guys do?
So I was in the National Guard, the Air National Guard, and September 11th happened, and my pager went off, and it said 911 on it, and then it had the phone number to my base, and I was like, oh crap! Like you knew what was going on, right? You go into DEFCON 4, it's like all hands on deck. So I drove down to the Guard base, and they said, hey, we're going to be here for the next 2 weeks. We had orders. And then that 2 weeks turned into year-long worth of orders. And then that year-long worth of orders turned into another year. So it was like pretty much 2 years on active duty.
Yeah.
And the deployments went from, hey, we're going to spend our 2 weeks a year in Turkey to now we're going to Oman. My first pump was to Oman, Masira Air Base, which is where they had, like all the C-130s that were putting people into Afghanistan. Like I did a pump to Pakistan to do, I don't know who I was, some general or something I was escorting.
Yeah.
Came back from Oman, had a hernia surgery, and then there was a unit that was deployed, a team, 13 people deployed to Jordan. And everybody knew we were going into Iraq. It's kind of like the book I'm reading where the person's actually telling you what's going to happen and you don't believe them, like Spy versus Spy, like the old Mad Magazine stuff.
Yeah.
Like George Bush is saying, hey, we're going into Iraq. And I was like, are we
Maybe.
really?
Yeah.
So we went to Jordan, and it was Prince Hassan Air Base, and it was super secret at the time, but it's where the Predator drones were going. They had the Hellfire and Brimstones attached to them. I have a picture of me somewhere where I'm standing on my buddy's back, and I'm humping the Predator drone, which was vintage E4, right?
Yeah.
And then Jordan, I think Iraq found out that we had people in Jordan that were like being put in to look for the Scuds, and we got kicked out of Jordan, went to Kuwait because Kuwait's like, hey, anybody that hates Iraq, we love. So we went to Kuwait. The ground offensive started, and then I'm in Iraq on like the third or fourth day of the ground offensive. We're starting the new air base, and it was just like, I mean, you talk about like the guy that's sitting in Sociology 102 a year and a half earlier, and his pager goes off to that. Like I never would have guessed that that's how my life was going to be. I mean, the cool thing was with the National Guard, all these recon Marines had gotten out of recon and joined the National Guard for college money like me.
Yeah.
So I got to meet all these dudes, and that's really kind of how I found my way into Blackwater. Is like
Meeting those guys.
Yeah, like really cool guys that had done some stuff, and they were like, Morgan's pretty good, give him a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, on those deployments, the time prior to going to Blackwater, did you get to do anything that was exciting or fun, or was it all just kind of administrative bullshit supporting the efforts?
Yeah, it really was just, I don't want to call it admin because that implies that there was air conditioning, but it's really like protecting planes, which when they recruit you to be security forces, they tell you you're going to be a cop.
Yeah.
And then they sent you out on like a gate, and you make sure that tanks aren't rolling through, right? So
or you're going to shoot them with your M9.
Yeah, like, hey, the Beretta that's going to jam on me.
I will bust a fucking cap. Yeah.
So, like Iraq, we came in there and full Kim gear, and it's hot as just the blue blazes of hell. You have your Kim gear on, then you have your flak vest on. We had one plate because, let's be honest, we didn't really plan for Iraq very well. And then you sat there with your LBV just staring at planes, like staring at runways. So, like you train for all this, you want to do it, and then you go to war, and then it's like so boring. Yeah. The only thing, I sent you some cash here. There was a backpack. It was like somebody's go bag. So when the Marines came in and took the airbase initially, this guy like put on his backpack and started running. Must have been captured. There's clothes everywhere, and I'm like, well, I'm a dipshit. We know this. So I'm walking around bored out of my mind, and I see this backpack, and I just go boot it like it's not an IED. So I kick it, and it just has some bulk. So I open it up, and it's got literally tons and tons and tons of that cash, where the guy was like, I'm going to be out of here. I'm going to have this much money. I'm going to spend it and get the hell out of Iraq.
Do you have any idea what it was worth then, even ballpark?
So before we went into Iraq during Desert Storm, the dinar was 3-1. So theoretically, every one of those $250 notes was worth $750.
Man.
But they froze the money after that, and then inflation took over, and those things weren't worth hardly anything, which is why the guy probably had stacks and stacks. But I was sitting on like tens of millions of theoretical dollars if they ever unfroze that. And I tried, I'm not going to lie to you, I went to the airport, because you have your currency exchange. I took them in there. I think I had a euro for some reason. I was like, I'm going to go trade in this euro. And they let us go through security to do the exchange. And then I put the Iraqi dinars out there. I was like, I just want my $750. And they were like, this is frozen currency. And I was like, never mind.
That's not mine.
I wasn't here.
These aren't my pants. As you guys know, sleep is a huge component to recovery and really all aspects in life. And it's something that a lot of us have struggled with, for a lot of our lives, frankly. As you know, I've been a big proponent of Beam, which is a hot cocoa that you drink before you go to sleep, and it's helped tremendously in terms of hours of sleep maintained as well as the quality of sleep. Today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, which is their science-backed hot cocoa for sleep, and it's got no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. As you know, other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess and just make you feel crappy, but Dream contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, and apigenin, also melatonin, to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling refreshed. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/micdrop, all caps, all one word, and use code MicDrop, all one word, all caps, at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/micdrop and use code MicDrop for up to 40% off. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Black Buffalo products are intended for adults age 21 and older who are consumers of nicotine or tobacco. It's your good buddy Mike Ritland here with the Mic Drop Podcast. If you are an adult age 21 and older and use nicotine or tobacco, I want to tell you about an American-made success story and Black Buffalo's award-winning nicotine pouches. Black Buffalo's nicotine pouches are not owned by Big Tobacco. They're an independent company proudly built right here in the USA for 21 and over adult consumers. Black Buffalo was built by dippers with decades of smokeless tobacco use. They believed the market wanted a tobacco alternative nicotine product that offered the best of both worlds: bold flavor, full pouches. What are they made of? It's pretty simple: cured edible green leaves, food-grade ingredients, and pharmaceutical-grade nicotine. Most importantly, there's no tobacco leaf or stem. Black Buffalo is all about the history and tradition of dip, but they understand the convenience and discretion modern-day consumers are looking for. Black Buffalo's nicotine pouches give you the versatility to consume discreetly, but still keep the ritual with flavors dippers love: mint, straight, and wintergreen, all proudly made right here in the USA. So, if you're 21 and older, consume nicotine or tobacco, and want to join the Black Buffalo herd, head over to blackbuffalo.com to learn more. You can order nicotine pouches online, and they ship directly to most states. Or check out their store locator to purchase pouches at thousands of retail locations around the country. Black Buffalo Tobacco Alternative, bold flavor, full pouches. Guys, as you know, I work with a number of different products. One that's easily the most near and dear to my heart from a cause standpoint and a personal relation standpoint is Bub's Naturals. The hat on the coffee table sitting right in front of me belonged to Glenn Doherty. It was a John Deere hat that I gave him. He had it when he tragically passed in Benghazi, and I was fortunate enough to get it back from one of the co-owners of Bud's. He sent it back to me to be able to keep. Bub's Naturals is a tribute to Glenn. He was one of everybody's, he's kind of that guy that was everybody's best friend. I met several people that considered him his best friend, and he was a guy that was impossible not to like, and just, caused happy waves that rippled through every community he was ever a part of. His nickname was Bub, and that's where Bub's Naturals comes from. But it's a lifestyle brand. It's inspired by Glenn. They give a ton to charity. They've donated over $200,000 to charitable causes since their inception in 2018. On Veterans Day, 100% of the proceeds go to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, which does phenomenal work helping active duty and children of lost active duty members go to college or scholarships that they've donated a ton, and they also are heavy into the recreation space of helping people do that, because that's what Bub was all about. They have collagen peptides, which I put into my morning routine every single morning, as well as the functional creamer / MCT oil that goes into it as well. They have hydrate or electrolyte drink mixes, which are great for pre-workout, during workout, and post-workout to get all the added sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc. that's required when you deplete it. And they now have Bub's Brew, which is a specialty organic coffee that is also very, very good. It's USDA organic, fair trade. It's Whole30 approved, which is the first time that's happened. It's free of yeast, mold, and aflatoxins. Small lot roasted, guaranteed fresh, and it tastes great. Biggest thing is Bub's is a family company. The way that they started is, again, super close to my heart, with him being one of my closest friends for a long time. And I just can't say enough good things about that company, of the product that they put out, why they started, what they give back to veteran communities and the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. And I encourage you to go to bubs.com, and now there's a landing page specifically for Mic Drop listeners. Just enter the code Mike, M-I-K-E, all caps, and you get 20% off your first purchase at bubsnaturals.com. So that's www.bubsnaturals.com/Mike. And you can check out the Mic Drop landing page and go support an amazing cause. Anything else happened during that time before you came back home and then start making the phone call connections to go into Blackwater?
So the Jessica Lynch rescue happened out of Tulil Air Base, but when you're on the ground, like, we thought J-Lo was dead.
Yeah.
Like, you just got no information. The only thing that ever happened that was awesome was some pilots came in and they dropped some Pizza Hut pizza from Kuwait. That was pretty neat. So we all got like one slice of pizza. And then I remember like the C-130s coming in, and they pulled the little birds off of the C-130s and they put them together, and they flew off one night and they came back because we had the cache, the Combat Army Surgical Hospital right there. That's where they took Jessica Lynch for her initial stuff, and then they flew her out of Tulil. But I had no idea that even happened until I got home, and they were talking about, the rumor was they had captured Jessica Lynch, who we didn't even know who it was. Saddam Hussein had her hanged and quartered, and they sent like an arm over to the east and an arm to the west and a leg to the north, and like the, I hate to say this, but the misinformation was just like rampant. I think you probably could have just made something up and it would have just flown all the way through every branch of service at that point, which J-Lo dying is probably how that happened. Yeah.
Well, so, it sounds like you were pretty compartmentalized there. Like, you were just blinders on doing what they told you to do, and everything else was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. An E4 sitting there like a DFP, and you just stand in this DFP all day. And but it was insane because you had the Army. I don't think most people know this, but during the ground offensive, you kind of had your bulk force that was active, and then every supporting force, a lot of it was National Guard members. So we had the Arizona National Guard Army unit came in, and they're coming in without their headlights on, trying to drive on an active runway. You're pretty much just trying to stop people from driving where a plane is about to land. Was our entire job.
Wow. So not the most exciting shit.
No. It was absolutely terrible and boring. But the nice thing is that with Kim gear, because it's all charcoal, it's like you just eat MRE after MRE after MRE, and you can blast farts and nobody smells it until you get into the tent at night and you pull down your pants and you're like, oh my God, that's hot cock. That's the smell of hot cock.
My favorite. Should make car tree air fresheners that smell like that.
Yeah.
All right. So you make some good connections though. You come back home. Walk us through the transition out of the Air Force and then ultimately getting hooked up into Blackwater.
Yeah, so I started going to college again, and my buddy, he's in the book predominantly, and he's like, dude, I think I'm going to go work for Blackwater. And this was April of 04. So it was right after the Blackwater guys got hanged in Fallujah. So that's all anybody knew about Blackwater at the time. And I was like, dude, that sounds absolutely insane. Like, have fun, enjoy yourself. And he's like, you should come do it. Like, I'll put in a good word for you. And I was like, I'm an Air Force guy. I'm not that cool. And I really don't want to go that bad anyway. It's not worth dying over. And we're sitting there and we're wasted one night and sitting on his porch, and he goes, man, do you want to be the guy that's like making millions of dollars, and then at the end of your life, you're talking to your grandkids and you say, oh, I was able to trade GE stock and I made all this money. And he's like, or do you want to tell like cool fucking stories? He's like, that's what Blackwater is. Like, we'll be able to tell fucking cool stories. And I was like, that sounds awesome. But I was like, I was so close to throw it up at that point. I would have said anything. So he went to go work for Blackwater. He was in the second class that they ever had for the State Department contract. And back then, it was all word of mouth. It's like, hey, do you know somebody that would want to come work for us? Give us their contact information. We'll reach out. So he got there class 2. And I literally, like 2 days later, got just a random call from Virginia area code on my landline because I wasn't that cool. And they're like, hey, this is James with Blackwater Security. Do you want to come over here? Your buddy says you're good in the pocket. Like, we'll bring you out here. If you pass everything, then we'll send you over to Iraq. It's $500 a day, 10% bonus at the end of your contract. And I was like, yeah, that money does sound pretty good. Yeah. And the stories or whatever. Yeah. But that money. So.
Yeah. And your buddy, he was a Marine?
Yeah. So he was a Force Recon Marine. He was with 5th Force.
Yeah.
So he was over there, and I was like, well, why the heck not? Like, what's the worst that can happen? They'll pay me $250 a day to go out there and, fart around.
$250 or $500?
It's $250 a day for the training.
Oh, I gotcha.
And then once you got on ground, it's $500.
Yeah. In terms of the training, the selection, et cetera, was that challenging, or did you find it to be not that difficult? Obviously, you passed.
I didn't think it was that difficult, but I was also the guy that came in and was like, I'm the Air Force guy, all right? So you're hanging out with cool Navy SEALs, you got Rangers, you got SF, you got like everybody, pararescue guys, and I'm like the Air Force Security Forces dude. Yeah. So I just shut the fuck up because that's what you should do in that situation. And like, I've always just been able to shoot. So the shooting was really easy. Once you get past the shooting and the PT test, then it all goes into like the SF-86 to get your clearance. We lost so many people on the shooting, which is kind of crazy, right? It's not that difficult. Start at 300, go to 250, go to 200, M4, pretty easy stuff. Pistol, we lost people on the pistol range. And then where we really lost everybody was the SF-86.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get your clearance through the State Department. They don't care if you have a DOD clearance. And if you're volunteering to work for Blackwater in 2004 after Fallujah, you probably haven't made the best life decisions, right? So these guys have like mountains of debt, or they have like some kind of criminal record, or like, where were you from 1999 to 2003? And they're like, I'm not sure. Maybe it was, maybe I was in Uzbekistan. Like, who the heck knows? So I think we started with around 40, graduated somewhere around like 2018, nothing crazy. But the training itself is, and I know the SEALs did this, but it's like walking the diamond, right? It's protective security. You walk the diamond, get the principal from point A to point B, situational training, and then like we did 2 days driving. And then at the end, you do like this little course where your principal goes into a building, and then you have to go in, you have to kick in the doors, do the CQB that they trained you in. After that, you get your principal in the car, and then you drive them around the track, and you're like, okay, you guys all graduated. Now we're just waiting on your clearance. And I'm 23. Here's the trick with this SF-86 is you just don't tell them anything. Like, yeses and nos, right? Yeah. So it's like, have you ever smoked pot? No. If I looked at your DOD clearance, would it say that? No. So like the all-American boy, I knew where I was. Like, I didn't have to account for the 3 years that I spent in the Philippines. Yeah. So my SF-86, my clearance went through like exceptionally fast. Yeah. And they were ready to put me on a plane literally the day I graduated. And I was like, I still have an apartment back home, so can I just move my crap out into storage? So I spent 3 days back in Phoenix moving my crap, and then I was off to Baghdad.
And so what was that like when you got over there, and now you're not just the E4 Air Force guy guarding planes. Now you're on the ground in Iraq at the height of when it was pretty fucking gnarly there, and now you're a dude walking around with all the other dudes. Like, what was going through your head?
Well, first thing was, holy cow, I'm like the faker in this whole thing, right? Like, how the hell did I get here?
The one you lied on your resume, poster child.
Yeah, I'm like, and they still gave me the job. I don't. So at the training facility, they tell you, we have all these up armor Humvees. We'll get you into Baghdad. You go to these, or not Humvees, Suburbans, and then we'll drive you over to the green zone, and then we'll set you up on your team. All of that is bullshit. Right. It's like any other job you've ever got where you come in, they say you're going to do this, and then they kind of like, oh, you're going to drive a tank, and then they're like, okay, you're the armorer, right? Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, it's probably what they knew, but when you come into Iraq, It was like a Casa Bird, one of those crappy little cargo planes. And instead of landing like normal, and dude, I went in during the ground offensive. Like, that was a nasty, nasty plane ride in the C-130. No, I think we were in a C-17. But it's like kind of nape of the earth, moving up and down. So the Casa Bird just goes up and it stays, and it's nice and comfortable. I got my laptop on my lap. I'm playing Minesweeper, which still don't know how to play Minesweeper, but you just keep, pushing it. My computer lifts off my lap, and I'm like, something's going on. Like, we're dead. Yeah. Like, we are going down. Fast. And then I didn't have a seatbelt on, nothing. Like, there was no reason to have it. So the Blackwater guys that flew this thing thought that it was great fun to essentially do this every time. So you come in and they just start corkscrewing in as fast and as violently as possible. Damn. And I'm just thinking, dude, we're going down. Like, I'm not even gonna have the cool story or the $500.
Yeah.
Like, this is a bummer. Yeah. I'm like praying. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, everything goes through my head in that split second. And then you start leveling off, and they put the back hatch down, the cargo hatch. This guy walks to the back with a 249, like lanyards himself in, sits on the back with his legs off the edge, like he's just swinging on a swing set. And I was like, dude, what the fuck did I get myself into? Like, this is crazy. Yeah. And everybody else had the same look, right? Like, you look around, and we're like the dogs that get in trouble. They ate all their food. We're like, what the hell? So we finally level off, we land, we take all of our kit out there, and we put it in this big pile, and they pull up in those shitty, like, SUV Peugeots, like, no armor, no nothing, just absolute trash. Oh, and a bongo truck to throw all your shit in. So you're in no armor. They give you an M4, a single magazine of ammunition. They're like, hey, we're going to go start bonsaiing down the most bombed route in Iraq, Route Irish, from the airport over to the green zone. And I was like, this is going well. This is really turning out exactly how I thought it would. Yeah. And with no armor, they'd be like, yeah, well, they had welded some plates around it. And then they were like, there's a plate down there by your thigh. So, like, if we get in the shit, you can pick the plate up and, like, hold it up towards the window. I'm like, you got to be shit. Like, I'm not a smart guy, but even I know that's not. Even if it does stop something, the plate's going to hit me in the face. I'm going to be rendered unconscious, and then I'm going to be the guy on TV getting his head chopped off with the goddamn knife.
Hung from a fucking bridge.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, it's like, keep your head on a swivel. So we're driving down Irish, and I don't even know what the hell I'm looking for. So it's just, you're just looking around, like, your head's out the window, have no idea what's going on. I'm like, is that a threat? Is that a... And then you get into Baghdad, and it's just like, I don't know, like it just all kind of settles down at the green zone. Go into the team house that we had, there's beers in the fridge, like everything. Like, those guys had been there maybe 2-3 weeks ahead of me, but you could just tell that, like, everything had calmed down. Yeah. Which is crazy, because like 2-3 weeks later, I'm picking up my buddy Tony, and I'm like the same way, because they had him in the back of the bongo truck with all the stuff, and he like made a little nest. Yeah. And he's got like a 249, and he's all over the place. And I was like, oh, I remember what that feels like. That does suck, doesn't it? Yeah.
So what did they have you do then, if it wasn't what you thought it was going to be? Like, what were the first things that you did for them actually outside the wire and in the protective capacity?
I think it's like everything else. Like, you build up what it's going to be in your head, and then on the ground, it's not quite the same way, right? So we definitely did, like, diplomatic security. First thing you do is we stood up new teams. These guys had been on ground for like 2 to 3 weeks, and they were like trying to tell us how everything was. Oh, this is it. And it's like, looking back, it's like these guys didn't have any clue what they were doing either. But hey, they knew better than we did. So we stood up a team. It was called Templar 12. So it was like Templar 2, 4, 6. I'm not a mathematician, but it was like the 6 team stood up. And we got hooked into the Regime Crimes Liaison Office. So, like, this is a pretty cool thing. They did all the evidence gathering for Saddam Hussein. So we got to go from, like, the Green Zone up to JSS Justice, which is where they had all their HVIs, the deck of cards. That's where those dudes were. Saddam Hussein was over at BIOP, which we had no idea at the time. But we would grab evidence. We'd drive it up to JSS Justice. We'd take it over to the courts for, like, the trials and stuff. And it was just, like, you're protecting dudes that are actually doing something that you feel is part of the war effort, or driving people around for the first election that they had for the interim government. And you're driving around and everybody's got their blue finger, which I was pretty sure is because they ate a bunch of blueberries, scratching their ass. Because like it didn't even occur to me that they wouldn't have like a national registration for voters, right? Yeah. Like you have no idea how far back you're going when you go to these countries. Yeah. Like the stuff that we were doing in the 80s in the U.S., these guys aren't even there yet.
Yeah,
doesn't even occur to me. So taking around diplomats, they're getting their pictures taken. They're talking to Fox News because of the elections and stuff. And you feel like, yeah, I'm really doing something. I'm helping the war effort. And then slowly start kind of realizing, like, I don't really know that we're helping a whole lot here.
Yeah.
So at that point, it really depended. The mission was dictated on like how often people wanted to move, right? So we went up to northern Iraq. We were supposed to be, it's like goddamn Gilligan's Island, dude. We were supposed to be there for 3 days. We were there for like 2.5 months before everybody was like, I'm still wearing the same pair of underpants. Like, can we at least go back and get our shit?
Yeah.
But like, interestingly, the Battle of Fallujah, right? There was the first one where the contractors got hanged. We started going into Fallujah and then we stopped. And then there was the second one, that was October of 2004, where we're going back into Fallujah. So what happened was we couldn't really go back and forth from northern Iraq because all the air assets were supporting the Fallujah ground offensive of the Marines going in there. So it's interesting in that like something that happens as a civilian contractor had that much of an effect on foreign policy and war policy within Iraq itself.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah, I mean the moving parts too that were involved are pretty absurd too. I am curious, when was the first time that when you were outside of the green zone that shit went sideways and you were like, holy fuck?
I didn't even have to get outside of the green zone.
Yeah,
because there's that river right on the other side of the green zone, and these guys would like take their bongo trucks. They would set up their mortars and their rockets in the back of it, and they would fire it every morning, every evening, like clockwork. And then they'd be gone before the military could get air assets up to track them. So they put us in this big circus tent, and we're hanging out, and the rocket hits. I think it's like day 2. The rocket hits day 2 or day 3, and it's pretty close. And it's like, that's not a big deal. This happened a couple days ago. And then the next one hits. It's closer. Everybody sits up in their beds, kind of looks around. It's like, I don't want to be the first pussy to run out. I just can't be that guy. I just need that guy to go, but like I can't be him. So the third one hits, and it is like close enough, shake your guts, like shake the tent, and everybody's like waiting for that first person. And thank God he stood up and ran out. And then we all were like, pussy. And then we ran right after him, right? And went and hung out in the little bunker area, smoking cigarettes until like the all clear came out. And I was like, holy shit, like this is actually real.
Yeah.
And then I would say we didn't start running until probably day 9. You know, you do your little train up and stuff over by the cross swords. So we finally got our mission. We're doing our first train up or our first mission. And this dude, like, we start opening the suburban doors, cracking doors, and like, you know, you got the guy behind you that's putting his rifle out there and he's trying to keep traffic off of you. And I was driving at the time. And one of the guys said something really cool, like, going hot. I don't know what he said, but like, all I heard is like, that reverberating sound of the M4 going off inside of that small little like suburban.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, like this is really real. Yeah. But even then, it almost got to a point, it just becomes mundane, right? You pick somebody up, you drive them up here, you go down this route, next day you go down another route. And it's probably like every job, right? Like the first 2 weeks, you're like, holy crap, this is crazy. And then you just get into that routine. So it didn't start getting really real until, I would say, like 7-8 months in when I got into the QRF. And the QRF, that's all those YouTube videos that you see. You're like, holy piss. Like, yeah, that was us.
Do you think that 7 to 8 month lead up to that was a good mechanism for kind of breaking you in to be able to deal with that? Like if that had happened day 4, do you think like you'd have lost your shit and been taken out, or like do you think that helped?
I don't know. You go, I mean, it definitely helped. Don't get me wrong, but there's some people that act and react just differently than what you expect.
Yeah.
Like before,
in both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some guys where you're like, you would never expect this guy to be like good.
Yeah.
And then you have another thing where it doesn't matter what your training is. Like
Yeah.
I met some of like the baddest people on the planet that could just act and react exactly the way you thought. And then I met who I would assume were like the baddest people on the planet that just like, they just froze.
Yeah,
they just,
Yeah.
So it definitely helped me. Plus, once you get in and you start like proving yourself out. So I was 23. They made me the tactical commander on the team because I can just remember routes. It's like Rain Man for some reason.
Yeah.
So I would always be able to like direct traffic. So start off as a driver, then I'm a TC, and people are like, holy crap, this guy's 23 years old and he's able to like run a convoy and not have any problems. So really kind of making those connections, proving yourself out, and then finally it's like, hey, you want to come over and do the cooler stuff? And it's like, fuck yeah, I do.
Was the pay any different going from what you were doing to the QRF stuff?
No.
Really?
No.
Way more dangerous and dynamic. same paycheck.
Yeah, like if I had gone over there in like my late 30s, early 40s, I would have been that guy that just stayed on the green zone and collected my check, right?
Yeah.
Like those guys, some of them just didn't have anything to prove, and some of them were just like old farts that you didn't want in anyway, right? So you put them in the head shed, or you say, hey, you're going to be on the ambassador detail. You're never leaving the green zone. Like let those guys do the easier stuff, and then let their dipshits like me volunteer to do the dumber stuff.
Yeah. All right. So the QRF, here's where shit gets interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the QRF started off as like, the traditional QRF, like shit hits the fan, you're going to go out there, you're going to help. Now, there's no such thing as like big army help, right? You can't just get on your radio and say, hey, big army, we're in the shit. So we had to have our own QRF force, which is, looking back on it, is kind of frightening, right? Like having come from the military and you have all that support and it's just you. And when you get outside of Baghdad, your radios go down, it literally is just you. Like there's no such thing as just being like, hey, let's see if there's like a fast mover up there. So we started the QRF, and it quickly turned into an escort service, but without like the hot chicks that you get to have sex with. Yeah. It's just us dudes. But we had, I don't know how we had it, but we had 2 Humvees. They were up armored Humvees. And then they were just regular armored Humvees. And then we went and like traded like KBR and the Army units, and we put up armor on them. And these things were just beasts. And we put like big, huge bumpers on the front, and they were just traffic movers, right?
About how many of you are there in the QRF?
Like 12.
And that's for how many people? Like, who are you the QRF for, numbers-wise?
It's probably, we had at least 12 to 14 teams, so 160 people at any given moment.
Yeah.
They could be moving around.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it just really depends on when somebody wants to move. So some teams would move all the time because their principals said, hey, we want to get out there. And then some teams would get 3-4 days off, and the principal would say, hey, I should probably make an appearance over here at the Ministry of Minerals or the Ministry of the Interior. So
to me, I understand, and I've heard it a million times, that pretty much all contracting companies were on their own.
Yeah.
To me, what's odd about that, though, like obviously the mission that they're supporting are all military or Department of Defense directed objectives. Do you know why the U.S. military didn't or wouldn't respond to contractors getting overrun or ambushed?
One, they probably just didn't know, to be honest with you. Like, we never coordinated with the military. And
so, to me, the obvious question is, why not?
Yeah, no, I still ask myself that, if that makes you feel any better.
There's no answer?
No, there really was no answer. We probably could, but this was before Blue Force Tracker. You couldn't figure out who was a good guy, bad guy on the streets necessarily. If they're in a Suburban, chances are they're probably a pretty good dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just no coordination.
Is that something that you ever thought of back then and or asked anybody? Or was it just like, I'm 24, I don't even think about shit like that, and I'm just here doing what they tell me to?
Yeah, no, I was happy being a window licker, dude.
Yeah, like just never crossed your mind? Like,
no.
Why aren't we able to call Uncle Sam?
Like, it crossed my mind when we would get into those places where we would no longer have radio comms, right?
Yeah.
So you know how like radio frequencies work, where it kind of bounces.
Yeah.
So you have high frequency, low frequency. So it's like, hey, we got no comms over here, so we need to figure out where that next bounce is so that we'll be able to call back.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a ton of different space where it's just you.
Yeah.
But at the time, I guess it didn't seem abnormal, but nothing seemed abnormal at the time.
It's like everything was so weird.
Yeah.
Everything was weird, and it didn't matter. Like, yeah. All right, so there's 12 of you. You get there. How long before you were actually out QRFing?
So, I mean, literally the day that I got on the QRF, we went out, and it was the day after because I got really drunk the night before, and we were supposed to have the day off. It's in the book. I felt like an asshole. I drank a ton of piss that morning because I woke up so hungover.
You drank piss?
Yeah, you know when you're too lazy to go to the bathroom and you piss in one of those big, huge tea bottles?
So you drank that?
Well, not on purpose, dude.
No, but I mean, like, to me, it's after a sip, you notice.
Yeah, but it was one of those drunken peas that was really clear, so you weren't.
So you drank a lot of it?
I drank a lot of piss. Yeah, I was going to start the PDA, the Pee Drinkers Association, and then I found out I was probably the only member that would admit to it.
No, for sure, you're not the only.
Yeah,
there's plenty, but so drinking. I mean, what base wise are you on a military base or a FOB or whatever? I mean, or are you guys on your own?
Sorta. So the Green Zone is kind of technically a large military base with a regional embassy office, right? So you got the big embassy right there, which is Saddam's old palace. And then every military unit has its own base within there.
Okay.
So it's all walled off. If you want to go to, I don't know, like see the 101st, they're over in one spot, 82nd at another. Like they have their own little compounds. And then you have all the civilians, the Iraqi civilians that lived on there, which made it really easy for them to bring in, like IEDs and shit.
Yeah.
So yes and no. Like this is the whole problem with the Iraq War. Is it's yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Like,
or it's sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to your point earlier, like it's a DoD directed mission, but it's not, right? We're in an active war zone, which should be controlled by the DoD. But when we gave the interim government like full reins over Iraq, it switched. It no longer became a DoD mission, right? George W. Bush went up there, mission accomplished, Nixon style. We didn't want to be seen as occupiers, so you couldn't have all these DoD people protecting diplomats because diplomats were there to help them build the country. So I'm going to digress for half a second, but the Ba'ath Party ran everything. From trash pickup to landing planes to the Ministry of Oil to everything. We got rid of the Ba'ath Party. So the people that were in the new interim government had no idea how to run a country. They couldn't even run a goddamn HOA, right? So it became a diplomatic mission, bringing all these people over to help them learn how to actually run a country. Yeah. And that's where Blackwater came in. And people are like, well, was Blackwater good or bad? Blackwater was, right? It could have been Triple Canopy. It could have been Aegis. It could have been DynCorp. Blackwater was because there was a mission, there was a need, and the State Department did not have the people to protect the individuals that were going out into the green zone or into the red zone, right? Yeah. So they had to bring in contractors to do this. So they bring in knuckle draggers like us. All the State Department guys would be like, "We're so much smarter and more educated than you, and you guys are knuckle draggers." And I mean, really talk down to us like just total
like
assholes. Yeah, like we were the help. So when we would take them out to different places, there was no coordination between DoD because it wasn't a DoD mission. It was a Department of State mission, or we'd have a CIA guy or an FBI guy or FAA or, waste management guy to teach them how to drive dump trucks and shit. So it could have been any one of those things, and we would just say, all right, well, he wants to go over here to the trash pile and teach him how to do dump trucks. Let's drive him over there.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that, it sounds like it was kind of disjointed as far as the military's doing what they do, the State Department in conjunction with the new Iraqi government are doing what they do, and those are not really related. I mean, it's in support of all the same thing, which is getting Iraq to a place where they don't need our help for anything. But in terms of the day-to-day in the weeds mission stuff, it was vastly different, right?
Yeah, well, and then different military units weren't coordinating. The CIA was different than the FBI people, than the NSA people, than like everybody had their own desire to show what they were doing for the war effort. And there was a hell of a lot of people that would say, "Oh, hey, look at how great we did. Look at what we did here." And none of them would say, "Oh, yeah, we totally fucked up." They'd be like, "Oh, that was a contractor or something." So it became very convenient for them to hire contractors because you can hire and fire on demand. And then once you have something go wrong, you could say, "Oh, those are the bad contractors. We got rid of them. We fired them." And you don't have to take the blame as the actual agency. But the agencies weren't talking to each other either, right? Like,
Do you watch The Office?
I have, yeah.
Reminds me of the when Michael Scott's trying to fire the HR guy, and he goes, "Well, Michael, you need cause." He goes, "I have cause. It's because I fucking hate him." And I mean, it sounds like that's kind of how it was. Like it was a total fucking circus as far as people coming and going and getting fired and hired and whatever.
Yeah, or moved, or like we had guys get fired because a State Department guy walked by and he was peeing on a fence. We had guys fired for steroids. Why do you care that they're using steroids? And we could probably get into this a little bit deeper, but if you don't have the same rules, you don't have the UCMJ, you don't have the local laws that are governing you, you pseudo have American laws that are governing you, like what and who has oversight over these contractors? And to this day, nobody really wants to answer that question because it's so easy to hire and fire, right? Yeah. I can blame this guy. It's not DHS, right? It's not the FBI. It's that one guy. It's Reality Winners that did it. And you're like, yeah, but who hired that dipshit?
So it's kind of fluid that way, where it's whoever is in the position to be able to hire and fire kind of dictated what the policy was when they were in that position, but only for then.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So there's no consistency. I am curious. I mean, at that time, did you realize it then, or even now, looking back on it, was there a single point of contact for the entire war in country, whether it was a person or an office, that basically had everything trickle down from there, that was the single point of contact of kind of running the show? Or was it all just left hand not talking to the right hand?
I mean, theoretically, it was John Negroponte, who was a dick. I mean, this guy was just a total asshole. But then, I mean, is Negroponte going to go over to the 4-star general and say, "Hey, I want you to do this at this time"? Like, it'd be completely out of his space. So it almost turned into like different fiefdoms. Right, so you have the military brass and Negroponte that are sipping scotch in like the nice palace areas. And then you start breaking that down into what unit is where within Iraq doing a different mission. Throw the contractors in there, throw like the coalition forces in there. And I don't think anybody had any idea that, and this is something that I've thought about a lot and talked to people. I have no idea what the end state was. I still don't.
Yeah. And
we're not there anymore, but there was no way for somebody to say, once we do this, we'll be good to go and we're going to leave.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the problem in Afghanistan also.
100%.
You know, it's like there was a lot more emotion involved in terms of that's where the people were that punched us in the mouth on 9/11, so we're going to go over there and we're going to fuck them up. It's like, okay, now we did that, now what? Well, we're still going to hang out here, and it just drug on. You know, with Iraq, it was even more ambiguous even from the start, you know.
Yeah.
But was that something that you thought about then at all, or is it more like now?
It's more like now, and I call it hindsight morality, right? So you go in there, you take out Saddam. I was there during the ground offensive. We thought we were going to be there for like 6 months. We were going to leave. And then after that, it's like, well, now we have to help them rebuild the nation. It's the moral thing to do, rebuild the nation. And then it's, oh, we have to promulgate democracy. And, oh, now we need to make sure that the little girls are going to school. And now we need to, and it just turns into this thing where you keep justifying why you're there based on whatever politics or public concern is at the time.
Yeah, it's like you just are slowly stair-stepping it to be like America in every facet.
Yeah, which is, I mean,
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of similarly. I mean, I was there when I was in my early 20s, you know, and same kind of thing. It's like there's so many things I didn't think about at that time. It was like, here's my skill set, here's why we're here, none of the rest of it matters. And
Right.
I would say to a large degree, it kind of doesn't, at least for what you're doing, why you're there, because the influence that you have over any of that is zero. Now, one could argue knowing that, may dictate or drive your decision to continue to go there or not, to stay in the military or to not. But I think that's most people's experience. I've had a lot of combat veterans on this show over the last 6+ years to both Iraq, Afghanistan, Horn of Africa, Northern Africa, what have you, and even Vietnam vets and you name it. And that is kind of the recurring theme, is that like at the time, it's like most military veterans, their experience is, I wanted to serve my country and this was the best way I knew how to do it. And I just basically entrusted the government and the people electing our government to determine where they see my use is as a best fit, and I'm not going to worry about the rest, And I think to a large degree you kind of need the military to have that mentality, or it's not going to work. I mean, if you have every swing and dick questioning every decision that's made and every policy that's put in place and what have you, I mean, there has to be some of that. But I think it's kind of the world needs ditch diggers kind of mentality, is that most of the military kind of has to be that way to do the things that we're doing, which I think further highlights how important it is that the people who are deciding what the military does, where they go, and how they do it is far more crucial than I think a lot of people realize.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, but now that I'm a little bit older and I have kids, and it's like, would I encourage them to go into the military?
I would not.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So, I mean, to me now, I absolutely wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't join the military now if I, if I was 19. I absolutely wouldn't do it. Which I hate to say, but that's just being honest. Like, I think the military machine, what it has turned into is embarrassing. And it's disheartening. But
yeah, so you essentially kind of fuck over one generation of war fighters, and then the next generation that they're raising are not going to be encouraged to go. So, yeah. I mean, you're putting yourself in a 30-year deficit of being able to recruit the people that you were kind of relying on for these wars.
Yeah. Got a little off tangent,
yeah,
but I mean, that's kind of the whole point, though. I mean, there's a lot broader scope to what you talk about in the book and the experience, the American experience in Iraq in the mid 2000s to even present day. That I think, a lot of times it's really in the weeds actions on the objective conversations about things that took place there. But I think there needs to be more reflective discussions on what took place there and why and what have you by the people that did it, 20 years after the fact to learn from our actions, I think. But
yeah, I mean, if you scratch under the surface of the book and you get through like, the fart jokes and, all the hooker stories that are absolutely hilarious, like, I try to hit on that just in bits and pieces. Like the story that always comes up is the police station in Kirkuk that we couldn't open because you had to have toilets. So we'd go in there, we'd put in toilets. They would go in the night, we put in toilets, steal all that shit. And then the next day we'd go in to inspect it, and KBR would say, I can't sign off on it. We have to order new toilets. 3 weeks later, you get new toilets. They go in, they steal all the shit. Like this was just kind of a microcosm of how the entire war went. It's like we cared more about their democracy and their well-being than they did. And then once we left, they kind of figured it out, right? I wouldn't say that I'm going to go there and hang out in the Hanging Towers of Babylon or the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, but like they at least got it figured out now. We probably should have just left earlier and let them figure it out back then. Yeah.
So, going back to your early days at the QRF, I guess going back to the drinking piss story, the very next day, you wake up hungover, you chug some piss, and then you get called in to do stuff. What happened?
Yeah, so they actually ended up doing a run, and I missed it. And the next day was kind of like D-Day for QRF. So QRF, we would escort the convoys from point A to point B because we had the big Humvee, we had the air sirens, we had like the air horn, we had the turret gunners. So they would say, hey, we have this team that's going from the Green Zone to the Ministry of Interior. We drop them off, we come back. Pick up another team, we're going to the Ministry of Minerals. Drop them off, go grab it, and then just kind of like go through it. So instead of 1 run a day, we were doing anywhere between like 6 and 12. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was spectacular. Because that's what you're there for. You want those cool stories. You want it to be leaked to YouTube later and tell everybody that wasn't you. Like that's how it works.
Yeah.
So we ruled the road, and everything is in context. So IEDs and VB IEDs, right? Car bombs, they were all the rage. And every car was a VB IED as far as you're concerned. When you got Negroponte in the car, like you're not going to take the chance that he's like a shitty driver as opposed to like a car bomb that's coming up is going to blow you up. So without that strict rule of engagement, without that UCMJ hanging over your head, we had to make split-second decisions to do what was the best, either for our livelihood or for the livelihood of the person that we were protecting. We weren't getting paid to like go out there and fuck shit up. We were getting paid for what we might have to do, and that is give our life to protect this other dude, right? So how do you do that? Well, you just start running cars off the road, right? Like let's just get as fast as we possibly can. So we would constantly push cars to the side of the road. We would get out of the vehicles to go and kind of fuck off traffic, right? Which makes you feel like a BAMF, right? Yeah, you're like the baddest motherfucker on the planet. You're out there with your rifle, pushing cars, going against the grain of traffic, pushing cars off to the right or left, driving over curbs. I mean, it was just absolutely insane, and I loved every second of it.
What vehicles were you guys running?
So we had a Humvee in the front, Humvee in the back, and then we had a ambulance, which was the Suburban that we had all of our med stuff in, our 19 or 18 Delta. They would hang out in that.
So just those 3 vehicles?
Yeah, and then so you would have the lead Humvee, and then you would have the convoy that you were doing. That could be 3 to 4 vehicles, and then you had the ambulance, and then you'd have the follow Humvee.
Okay. What in terms of personnel and armament in the Humvees? What did that look like?
You had a 240 Bravo up top, and then usually a Parasaw in one of the back door gunners, and then everything else was M4 and pistols.
Yeah.
So
how many dudes?
Well, it was 5 per Humvee, right? And then you had 3 in the ambulance. So you're looking at 13 dudes at any given moment.
12 plus the corpsman.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, doing 6 to 12 runs like that where it's super dynamic, you're running people off the road. Is there a percentage of how many times you ended up getting in gunfights that you could say, a range? I mean,
dude, so it's like a porn shoot, right? Like you go over there, you shoot, and then you leave. So
is that how it happens?
Yeah, it's like a shoot and scoot, right? Yeah. So it's not like we would sit there and wait for something. So we would engage cars almost on every run. Yeah. Somebody would pop open a door. The Humvees had the windows that came down so you could pop around. And you're not trying to kill these people, right?
Just be like a quick, we'll use your reference, a quick money shot and then you leave.
Yeah, it's a
quick break contact and get the fuck out.
Yeah, this dude is coming up on us while we're trying to take a right. He's coming up on us. Like, what do you do? So you try to shoot out a tire, you try to shoot at the hood of the car, it stops them, and then you go. Yeah. And this was every single run. And I know Eric Prince will say like, oh, we had less incidents than anybody else. We didn't report anything. And who the fuck would we report it to? Yeah. Like, that's the thing.
You didn't keep a diary.
Yeah, well,
Hence the book.
Yeah. So
so I mean, with that, obviously most interactions you're not trying to injure or kill them. You're trying to either disable the vehicle or just break contact. Obviously, there were times where people were actually trying to attack you guys, though, correct?
Who knows, man?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it didn't happen. I'm like, we were driving through the tunnel and there was gunshots, and it's like, is that us? Is it them? Is it like, who knows? But at least when I was in there, it wasn't like having somebody pop like the front windshield and there's a hit. If we got shot at, who knows? Like, yeah. My entire life was a 12 by 12 window looking out behind the driver and just keeping my field of fire open. Yeah. So whatever happened, if it wasn't in my window, it was just stories that I heard.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, the first, you said 7, 8 months, it was doing more not admin stuff, but you know what I mean? But then once you did the QRF, the rest of the time that you were at Blackwater was spent doing that?
No, I got fired.
Really?
Yeah. So
how long did you do the QRF part for?
Oh, Jesus. I don't even know, man. Long enough to get videos on YouTube.
I mean, ballpark, months?
Yeah, probably a couple months is my guess.
And so in that several month period, are there any runs that stand out as being exceptionally memorable?
Dude, there was a lot because like you get up on the elevated highway and you're just trying to go as fast as you possibly can. So the elevated highway ran like east to west. I think they called it Route Tampa. I can't remember. But anytime we got on that thing, it was like NASCAR. It's like you get in there, you try to get into the left lane, somebody's in the left lane, like we hit a car and you just watch it like careen off to the side, hit the barrier. We had a car like fly off the elevated highway coming up on our convoy. We engaged it and it just like absolutely flew off of the off ramp and it did not have a soft landing. The one that always sticks out of my head is we hit this bongo truck. Bongo trucks are made of kryptonite. Like Superman can hit these things and they are just solid steel. And they look so soft. Like they look like they're not a big deal, but they are just absolutely solid steel. And we hit this thing as it was coming across traffic. We hit it and it threw me like into the hood of the top of the Humvee. Like my nose started bleeding. I smashed my hip into an ammo can, and it was so violent that it actually bent the frame of the Humvee.
Oh wow!
To the point that the radiator fan like couldn't keep spinning. So it was dead. It was DOA right at the time. We didn't know it, but
so you kept driving it and overheated it.
Yeah. Well, we limped it back and we're like, all right, we probably need to get this thing checked out. And then within 2 days, they were like, no, this thing's dead. It's done.
Yeah.
But we had all of our up armor on it. We had our cool bumper. You know, we painted the Punisher skull on the back. Like, it was like losing a family member, you know?
Yeah. In that couple of months doing the QRF before you got fired, were there any instances where you guys got IED'd or shot at where it was very tangible that you were being attacked, or was it all interactions kind of like what you've already mentioned?
Pretty much interactions like I mentioned.
It's nothing super hairy.
No, and even if there was, it's like you just get off the X and you get the person back home.
Yeah.
Like it's not, we did have a convoy that got hit by an IED and then the QRF went out there and like towed them back in. We had car accidents where the one Suburban would run into another one and be disabled, and like you're pulling people, you know, you're pulling these in, you're towing, which is always kind of like a frightening thing, right? You have a disabled vehicle, you grab the tow straps, you're running back there trying to hook them up. The person in the front is a dipshit and doesn't like still has the vehicle in park when you're trying to tow it. Like it's just like in the moment, it's probably like the most crazy thing that's ever happened, but it just never, I think that it was kind of by design, right? The Sunnis had been, you know, had their ass kicked by Saddam for 30 years. They were more interested at that point of going and getting retribution on the Sunnis, right? So the Shia kill squads, that was 04, that was 05, Haifa Street, like with the Iranian Guard that was right there. They were more concentrating on like, let's just really create this rift between the Sunnis and the Shias. And the military was just kind of along for the ride. You were just kind of lucky if you didn't get hit, or if you did get hit, like it wasn't nearly as like forceful, I think, as it started getting when we had the surge. What was that, like 06, 07?
Yeah, I think 07.
Yeah.
During the QRF time, it was all State Department support driven, right?
I mean, it really just depended on who we were moving out. But yes, like from an umbrella standpoint, it was all under a State Department contract.
But it could have been anybody.
Right.
That they directed to be protected or moved or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, like they had to send over air traffic controllers to the airport to teach these guys how to land planes.
Yeah.
So it could be an FAA guy one day. It could be, you know, somebody that was a CEO for an oil company at one point that's going over to the Ministry of Oil to tell them, hey, this is how you actually like go through the process of pumping oil. Yeah. I mean, like when I say they got rid of anybody in a government capacity because they were Blackwater, because they were Ba'ath Party, it was everybody. Yeah. I mean, from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, so they're basically starting an entire country from scratch.
Yeah, except the country is already like built,
Yeah.
right? Like it'd be one thing if you were like, hey, I'm going to put in these 250 homes and we're going to create an HOA, but when you're going to go in and try to create an HOA and there's 250 homes and half of them are already dilapidated and the guy's got his car out front, like imagine if somebody came to your house and said, hey, we're going to fine you for not having your house painted the right color, and you're like, fuck you, man. I mean, that's just it's hard to blame the local populace of Iraq looking back at it.
Yeah. Was it during the QRF where the kind of epic Animal House parties were taking place?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much from the day we got there.
Yeah.
So I call it the combat mullet, right? Like business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Tell
you go
us
out
about
there,
that shit.
you go out, you do your run. And this is how I start the book. You go out, you do a run. Like I ended up shooting out a tire of a dude. And then we go into the green zone, take a shower, go work out, and then you're just at the pool. It's Thursday night, you're at the pool. There's so much beer that you can buy. There's beer, there's Jack Daniels, there's everything. Now the beer, I'm not gonna lie to you, if it's June in Iraq and it's 140 degrees and the beer's sitting out on a pallet, it's not the tastiest Carlsberg you've ever had.
Yeah.
But it gets the job done, right?
Yeah.
So we'd go out to the pool and just get absolutely hammered. Just hammered.
Was the prospect of being called out non-existent at that point because you're only doing specific movements? The QRF is in relation to pre-planned State Department shit. It's not like military QRF where they're going out and maybe they're ambushed and you didn't realize it. Now you're going to have to be activated in the middle of the night. There was basically no chance of that, which allowed you to get shit-faced like that.
Yeah, they did not. They didn't run at night.
Okay.
It was all during the day.
Okay.
So once the sun went down, it was time.
The military's going out and you guys are getting shit-faced.
Yeah. I mean, it seems. I don't know how we didn't win faster. I mean, it's just.
Yeah. So tell us about the pool experience. I mean, is it just you guys? I mean, is it a fucking sword fight, or are there other departments and entities there that are kind of all coagulating at the Oasis?
Oh, it was everybody.
Everybody.
It was everybody, but the military people couldn't drink, right? So, but you would still have like the military people out there. They have like a little gazebo that they had, and the Blackwater guys would go up there and try to hit on like the Navy officers and stuff. But it was sausage fest, right?
Yeah.
It was amazing. Everybody's bare chested, but so like one of the time, like we had like a little fire pit over in one side, and then Saddam Hussein's pool is like the Ritz-Carlton. It's probably how I envision Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just absolutely gorgeous, well maintained. There's a fountain that has, I think, like a flying gypsy that's spitting water out. Like it's beautiful. So we, of course, after a few drinks, somebody like decides they're going to jump into the pool, and then it's like any other time you're probably in the special operations community. It's like it's one-up time, right?
Yeah.
So one guy jumps in the pool and does like a cannonball. And then the next guy's like, I'll do a jackknife. And then finally somebody comes up there and is like,
I'm going to throw a grenade in that motherfucker.
not quite, but it gets close. Like they start doing front flips and back flips off the pool, like the diving board. And then somebody steals a bike, takes it up there, rides it off the diving board. And by then, like everybody's watching. Yeah. And like we're cheering people on, which when you're drunk and you think you're like the baddest man on the planet, you're like, I got to one up that guy. Yeah. So it's like, now I'm going to do a bike and I'm going to try to do like those little wheelie hops off the pool, the diving board, and then two fucking guys, and I know who they are, but I won't call them out by name. They go over there and they grab like those AC units that are hooked up to the outside of the building.
Yeah.
They yank this thing off the wall. They climb it all the way up to the top of the diving board, which is like, it's a 10-meter diving board. And then they throw it into the pool, and everybody cheers, but it's too goddamn heavy. You can't pull it out of the pool. So we all just kind of disperse. And the next day, it's like the radio call comes over, and they're like, "Oh, we got to have a team meeting." So everybody gets together in the tent, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, we heard they got a little crazy at the pool last night. Just want to make sure it wasn't any of the Blackwater guys." And then we're like, "It was Brad. I saw him do it. It was totally that dude." And they're like, "No, I don't think you're getting it. Like, it wasn't us. Yeah. It wasn't." And they're like, "No, fucking, I saw him. I saw him do it." So we had to do like the veil of secrecy over this. And then when you have that many dudes in one spot and there's like almost no women, like there's fist fights over girls. There was a bar in the hotel, I can't remember what the name of the hotel, some Sheraton hotel in the Green Zone that had like a club underneath it. So the State Department and all the girls from like the agencies would go down there, and then the Blackwater guys would go down there, and they're getting drunk, and you're watching like junior ambassador probably went to some snooty ass school like Tufts or whatever, and is like grinding all over this Blackwater guy that has like barely a high school education. It was like, it was harmony.
Yeah.
It was just educational harmony all in one spot.
The yin and the yang of Iraq.
Yeah.
I am curious. I know when you get drunk, you don't make good decisions, but June in Iraq, pulling an air conditioner out of a fucking window and throwing it in the pool, like, seems like about as dumb a thing as you could fucking do.
Well, I wouldn't say it's even in the top 10 of the stupidest shit that I saw over there.
Well, give us that rundown then.
Well, I'll give you number one is it was on my birthday, and you never tell anybody your birthday, because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to hog tie you.
Yeah.
They're going to duct tape you. They're going to put duct tape in your hair, on your beard, and then they're going to throw you in those big piles of sand where they would make their sandbags. Throw you in that thing, pour water on you, kick dirt in your face, and then, after that, they'll cut you loose, and then you can try to go punch somebody if you want, but at the end of the day, it's all in good fun. These are your good friends, right?
Yeah.
These are your best buds. So it's my birthday, and I'm sitting around the fire pit behind the pool, and we're just like drinking Coronas. It's actually a pretty calm night at the pool. And this guy like pulls out his magazine, takes an M9 bullet, and throws it in the fire. And I was like this seems pretty stupid. Like, I don't know a whole lot, but I know that that's probably not the best idea.
Yeah.
So a few more beers, and then like another guy pops his out and throws one in the fire. And then, I'm like, at this point, I'm drunk enough where I'm like, fuck it, I'll throw it in the fire. And I'm thinking in my head, like, if I die outside of this fire, like, what are they going to say? Like, Morgan died a hero.
Yeah.
He was protecting the freedom of the Iraqi people and others, and he died as a hero. And I'm like sitting there bleeding out with an M9 round in my chest from the goddamn fire. So they start cooking off, and you just see like this little burst of flames where the gunpowder like pops, and I'm like, I'm not hearing bullets fly, and the guy's like, don't worry about it. The shells are just cracking, and that's what you're hearing, and it's not really that dangerous. And then like another one pops off, and another one pops off, and I'm thinking, we are really like the dumbest people on the planet. And these guys are like in their late 30s and 40s, and I'm 23 at the time. Well, just hit 24. And I was like, is this really how we're gonna die?
Did anything happen?
No.
I assume with no chamber and no barrel and no pressure, like, there's not going to be a significant amount of velocity behind it. I mean, it's still a dumb fucking thing to do, but I don't think it would kill you, right?
It probably wouldn't, but who the hell knows?
Yeah. We when we were at Fort Chaffee, quick story, we actually set a pallet of pen flares on fire. And those don't need a chamber or a barrel to fly, obviously. So that was a fucking nightmare. Like, I don't know who thought that was not even just okay, but a good idea. And it was to get rid of them. It was like, it was one of those, hey, we have 46,000 pen flares that we have to dispose of before we leave. And we can sit here, for 3 days straight wearing your fucking thumbs out trying to shoot these things off, or we'll just fucking burn them. Let's burn them and see what happens. And it was a fucking nightmare. But anyway, it reminds me of that. So that was number one. Can you share any of the other 10 dumb things?
Yeah, well, so people's going away parties is another good time where you're going to like just fuck them up as bad as you can to say farewell. So we took one guy out to the volleyball court, hog-tied him, kicked dirt in his face, hugged him, told him we were going to miss him, strips butt naked, and then just sprints through the U.S. Embassy, just absolutely naked through the embassy. And there's pictures of it. It's spectacular. Yeah. It's spectacular to watch. It was just... That would happen on a weekly basis. So it wasn't normal.
Just always some dumb shit going on.
Yeah, but it wasn't abnormal. Like, we had a female dog handler that finally came in 2005, and she had her pick of the litter. I mean, over there, she was probably an 8. So back home, she was 2, 3. Like, she was a big, burly lady. Yeah. But, one of the Navy SEALs went over there and banged her, and then, somebody from like the Ranger Battalion went over there and gave her the meat stick the next day. And then the next thing you know, they're out front and they're fighting over this chick. And she's like, look, I'm just catching meat wherever I can, right? Like I'm just here for the party, guys. And you guys are all willing. And they're literally fighting over this dog handler chick. Or, I mean, there's some terrible stories that I don't want to get into because like I still know the dudes, but God, just if you throw any kind of female into a mix like that, it turns out bad. But
yeah, it's like throwing a fucking chicken in a piranha tank. I mean, it's just fucking horrible.
We did have some contractors. Jeez, I feel like I'm having confession here, but it's in the book. So if you want the whole story, you'll have to read it. But there was like a Kid Rock concert over at Biop, right, at the airport. And they're like, we're going to go watch Kid Rock. Who wants to go? And I was like, dude, I'm not going to go drive in the middle of the night to go watch Kid Rock and come back. So they picked up a couple of Army chicks while they were over there, drove them all the way to the green zone, and then tried to fuck one of them in like Negroponte's bed because he wasn't there. And the guy's like, dude, you can't come up here. And Saddam's like massive bedroom where Negroponte sleeps on his Tempur-Pedic and bang this chick out. So they ended up like leaving them in the green zone and they couldn't get back on the man camp. So I don't know what happened to those girls. They're like probably in their PTs with like the reflective belt on and they're calling their first sergeant like, hey,
we're at the gate.
No, we're not even at the gate. You have to drive 7 miles on the most bombed route in Iraq to come pick us up because we hooked up with these contractors last night. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, it's the whole book is just filled with stupid stories like that, where it's just the only reason I wrote it. There's 2 reasons I wrote it. One, I'd tell people these stories and they'd say, write a book.
Yeah.
And then the second one is like, you can't understand how absolutely insane that was from a ground perspective. Like I could have went there and I could have talked about how Negroponte was thinking or Bremer or any of these other generals were thinking about the war effort. But when you were on the ground, it was the most insane time I've ever been a part of in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, it's Animal House, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get that from, I mean, not just my experiences, but just knowing a lot of guys that did a ton of contracting for years and years after that. I've heard so many of the same stories. Title-wise, you know, we get the guns part, talking about the girls part.
Yeah.
From a greed standpoint, where does that come in?
Oh, man, the contracting community is all butthurt by this. So I call myself a mercenary. I don't care what you call yourself. Doesn't matter to me. But at the end of the day, you can't say you went over there to contract out of the kindness of your heart and you really wanted to go help the war effort, and that's why you became a contractor. You could have raised your hand. I could have went back over there as an E5 in the Air Force, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's be honest. The big push was they were paying you $550 a day to go over there and do fun, cool shit, right? So that's the greed part. I mean, a lot of these guys like me didn't grow up with a whole bunch of money. So there's 3 topics of conversation, right? Like, what are you running on your gun? What are your optics? What do you have? Girls.
Which chick are you nailing?
Yeah, which chick are you nailing? Oh, so many hooker stories, dude.
From there?
Like, the people that would leave and come back, they always came back with such amazing hooker stories.
Left from where?
Left from Iraq. So, like, you go to Amsterdam, people go to Thailand, the Philippines, but you never know what you're going to get with those. Yeah. Like, I was sitting next to this really hot Filipino chick on the bus the other day, and I was like, don't get a boner, don't get a boner. But she did. So,
she did.
So, like, they would come back, and it's like the worst thing that could ever happen during a hooker story, and they'll tell you, and you're like, God, that's hilarious. That's spectacular.
Is there one that stands out that you can share or will share?
Yes, there is one. So this dude goes to Amsterdam, and he's a fancy guy, right? He was an officer before he got into Blackwater, and he's like, yeah, I go into like these. I don't go to the red light district. I go to this little place, and they bring you in, and they set you down on a nice leather couch. Probably looks like this. I'm guessing maybe red. Who knows? And then they march the women out, and they stand in like a half circle, and you can be like, I want that one, or I want that one, that one, that one. Like, and then you don't go into like the crappy little cot area. Like, they have a bed, and like there's nice lighting, and the sheets are silk, 500 thread count Egyptian cotton. I don't know. I'm making all this stuff up. So he goes in there and he sees this Vietnamese lady. And he's like, that's the one. And he's like, she's just fucking gorgeous, man. Like, I got to have her. So they go in there and they're in the room and he's like, yeah. And then she puts on a condom and she's blowing me and it's like all great. And she lays me down on the bed and like she's sitting there on top of me, like getting ready to squat on me. And he's like, and I got to say something. I don't know why I have to say something, but like, I got to say something. And he's like, and then she gets closer and closer. And I'm like, probably centimeters from being inside this beautiful Vietnamese chick. And he's like, and I say, so where are you from in Vietnam? He said she leaned over, got really close to his face and said, the place you bomb.
No shit.
And he's like, dude, I never got to live that fast in my entire life. And I just like paid the lady and took off.
Holy crap,
yeah.
man.
No, there's like people buying hookers in Fort Lauderdale, like used up hookers in Fort Lauderdale. Like the stories were spectacular.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly convinced that I've never heard like a good hooker story.
Never?
Well, like it always turned like they're all great for me.
Yeah.
But
not a good story from the storyteller's perspective.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, and then she came over and
and it was awesome.
We made love. Right.
Do you do that with hookers ever?
I don't know.
Does that ever happen?
Well, you would think like there's got to be some good hooker stories out there. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm like her regular and she comes over and she shaves my butt. Like just deviant stories. Like,
I think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think most people are, we'll call it contracting hookers because they're in a good place where, they want to have a good, sensible experience. It's kind of the opposite of that. But so in that kind of vein of writing the book, I mean, what you mentioned kind of why you did it and what the thought process behind it. Is there more of a macro to it than that? I mean, when thinking to yourself like, oh, I want to get this out there, what was going through your mind that way?
I mean, there's been so much said about Blackwater, right? We did good, we did bad. At the end of the day, like I really want the reader to go through it and see what that ground perspective is and say, were they a net positive or a net negative? Not even like did Blackwater need to be there? Because we did. We absolutely had to be there. But I wanted to take the narrative away from the CEOs. Eric Prince has a book. Jeremy Skakehill has a book. There's like the Brimmer Detail, there's a book. I wanted to take that away from the journalists and the politicians and the generals and say, this is what it's like on the ground. Like these are the stupid conversations that you have when you're bored. Like this is what it actually looks like when you're scared to death. This is what it feels like when your buddies die. Like this is what goes through your mind. This is how you progress as a human in a combat zone, right? So when I went back as an Army officer in 2009, I told my soldiers, you're going to spend the first 3 months there and you're going to be like, I am gung-ho, 100% ready. I want to help these people. And then your second 3 months there is going to be like, okay, we know what the hell we're doing. We're going to execute it. We're going to do it as well as possible. After 6 months, from 6 to 9, you kind of start getting apathetic. Like what we're doing does not seem to be changing or helping anything. And then after 9 months, you're just counting down to get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's really, I don't care if you're a soldier, I don't care if you're a contractor, like you go through that mental process. Now, the problem with contractors is that you will always go back to it if you want the money or if you need the money.
Yeah.
So all those symptoms of either PTSD or stress or anger or whatever is coming through that, you don't get paid the day you get back. You don't have that first and the 15th. Like contractors are in a very precarious situation. And look, this is not a boo-hoo me, I made my money, I got out. But when you have put civilians into a war zone and then they come back with all the same stressors that you have soldiers have, how do they adapt to that? And the truth is that a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
A lot of them put their entire self-worth into being Blackwater. The difference between Blackwater and Triple Canopy, I've been told, is that if you worked for Blackwater, you got the bear paw tattoo.
Yeah.
Like exact same like mission, exact same job. Blackwater, like for some reason, has this aura around it of like badassery, right? Yeah. I am very self-deprecating. I'll tell you like how stupid I am in this book. I'll tell you some of the smartest dudes I ever worked with were Blackwater guys.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go to Harvard. Some of them did. Some of them went to Harvard out of spite. Like, I'm tired of being talked down to these guys that I'm driving around, that I'm protecting, and they're telling me, oh, well, I went to Harvard.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, fuck it.
Yeah.
And literally a dude went to Harvard, got his degree in econometrics, went back to contracting so he could rub that in those motherfuckers' faces.
That's awesome.
Like
Stubborn fuck.
yeah, like it's shocking how intelligent these people are.
Yeah.
The difference is that if you grow up and you know you're on that Harvard track, you take it. And if you grow up like me, like a dumb redneck, like college, nobody's ever gone to college, you don't know what the heck you're doing, like you take the military track. Either way, I think that you're really putting yourself, like you're a high performer either way. These people chose, hey, I want to go do some cool ass shit. And the other people were like, hey, I want to go be in finance over in Wall Street. So I want to give that human perspective of what it was like to be a contractor. And you can like it and you can hate it. You can laugh at the hooker jokes. You can laugh about how I had dysentery and, crap my pants for 3 straight days and had to waffle stomp the turds down the shower because I was literally shitting in the shower like a little tiny baby boy. But there are real human consequences when you put and inject civilians in a combat zone. And then there's no fallback for it. The day you leave is the day you stop getting paid.
Yeah.
You come back as like an Army officer, Air Force guy, still going to get the 1st and the 15th, still have medical benefits, still going to have my BAH, my BAS, all that good stuff. Yeah. As a contractor, you come back and the spigot is cut off.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and say, well, you made so much money over there. Like, why didn't you save it? Because I'm stupid. All right. I needed a Land Rover really bad. Yeah. But the suicide rate for contractors, I guarantee, is way higher than any other branch service.
Do you have any data behind that, or are you just saying that you would bet that it is?
I would bet that it is, only because when you deploy with the military, you deploy as a unit, you come back as a unit, and yeah, you're going to be spread after that, but you have 2, 3, 4 months where you're with the same people that you can talk to. You're seeing them every day. You're in formation. You're at PT, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah. A
contractor comes home and it's just you.
Yeah.
It's you and it's your thoughts. And yeah, there's some other contractors that you can text, hey, I sent James a dick pic the other day, so like I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But you can't go to the VA and say, hey, I worked for Blackwater. Thankfully, a lot of us were prior military and had the service and we can still get the VA stuff, but nobody is sitting here saying like, oh, you were a police officer, you went to go work for Blackwater. Let me show you your support group. Let me bring you in here so that we can actually help you get through all that fucking crazy shit that you did. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, thinking about warfare historically, back before airplanes were a thing, and especially going back to like Roman Empire, type of conflict era, there was no shortage of god-awful things that these guys did and experienced, but one of the things I think a lot of people don't think about is it took them fucking months to walk home from that. And they were together without the conflict, hunting for their food as a group, sitting around fires at night.
Throwing bullets in them.
Yeah, throwing bullets in them, but spending months decompressing on the way home before they got home, whereas now it's like 14 hours from being deep in the heart of God knows what in Baghdad or Afghanistan or wherever, you're home holding a fucking infant, like there's such a dichotomy of experiences there that it's just not normal, to go from one environment to another that's so contrasted. You mentioned the CEO books, Eric Prince, The Bremer Detail, and a third one that I can't remember his name that you said.
And Jeremy Skakehill.
Have you read those?
I read Jeremy Skakehill's book when I got back in 2006, and it was just a total hit job, dude.
On what?
On Blackwater, like the largest private military in the world, right? Like he found every single thing that he could to just kind of do a hit job on Blackwater. It shouldn't exist. Like there's no background of it saying like, this is why it existed. Like we were dumb enough to get rid of the Bath Party. We had to do this. We were dumb enough to say, this is no longer DOD. This is Department of State. Like that was all policy or lack of policy planning. And Eric Prince, I didn't read his book. He really is a proponent for contracting, and he still is to this day. Like, he just did something where he was trying to get, I think, 200 or 2,500 Venezuelans to go over to Nigeria or somewhere in Africa to help stabilize the country. Like, he's absolutely always going to be a proponent of using contractors.
Yeah.
Frank Gallagher wrote the Bremer Detail. Check it out. Plank Setter, those are the guys that started the whole PMC thing. And his was written with the journalist, and it's definitely an absolute awesome book. Go read it. But it didn't reflect my experience, right? Like, they had a very specific mission. Like, this is your dude, keep him alive, right? Whereas, with us, it just felt like it was every day was a new adventure. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that any of those books are necessarily good or bad or don't reflect what those people think about it. What I'm saying is that me as the dude on the ground throwing bullets in the fire, listening to hooker stories, like literally looking down the barrel of my weapon and shooting at that red sedan that's barreling at us on the elevated highway was my entire perspective.
Yeah.
And if you want that ground level perspective, like you're hanging out with me and we're either at a bar or you're sitting next to me in the Humvee, like that's what this book is.
Yeah. Would you say that early on in the interview you mentioned, not that Blackwater was good or bad, that they just were. As you look back at it 20 years later and you think about kind of the grand scope of the entire Iraq war from start to finish, our policy, the reasons for going, how it was handled, do you still feel that way looking at Blackwater specific? Do you have an opinion, especially having gone back into the military, into the Army as an intel officer and going back to Iraq and seeing kind of a whole other side? What are your thoughts on it now? Like Iraq as a whole, contracting, military, et cetera.
You can't make up for it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. You can't make up for the fact that you didn't have a plan when the thing started. So Iraq was never going to be this bastion of democracy. Iraq was probably better under Saddam Hussein. And that guy was a dick, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think that you would have that many projectiles going from Iran over to Israel if Saddam Hussein or his sons were in power. They wouldn't have let him use the airspace. They just wouldn't. They fucking hated each other, right? It's like the Sunni-Shia shift, the 1980 to 1988 border conflict that they had. They hated each other.
Yeah, you can't argue that when Saddam was in power that Iraq kept Iran in check way fucking more than they're kept in check now.
Yeah, as crazy as it sounds, he was a stabilizing factor between the Sunnis in Saudi Arabia and the Shias in Iran, and he was smack dab in the middle of it. Yeah. Total dick, right? Like you don't gas 9,000 Kurds up in Halabja and not be an asshole. Yeah. But looking back on it, like when I got there for the ground offensive, I was all gung ho, right? Oh, they have those WMDs, I know it, and we found some gas masks in one of their closets. Oh, well, why would they have gas masks? It's not because we're going to gas them. It's because they have the gas, right? So I absolutely believe that we were going there for the right reason. And then as I got older and I started watching the war progress, right? 03, kind of happy to see us. 04, sort of happy to see us. 05, hate our guts. 9 and 10, couldn't wait for us to get the fuck out of there so that they could just fight it out and figure it out themselves. Like watching it progress, there was no way it wasn't going to end with the Sunnis and the Shias fighting it out.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, again, looking back on it now, of why Bush and us as a country, why we really went there? Do you think it was because of that? Do you think that we were fed a line of shit, or do you think that's just what they thought, did the best with what they had at the time, and it just wasn't right? What are your thoughts?
So it's kind of like the book I talked about earlier, The Traitor and the Spy. So they get this KGB agent, and the KGB agent says essentially, I'm going to tell you secrets because I don't like communism. And then MI6 is like, oh, why is he telling us these secrets? Is he trying to get me to be a spy for them? Is he trying to like convert me? Am I converting him? Is it like this spy versus spy game? At the end of the day, Saddam Hussein was like, I don't have chemical weapons. And we were like, you're a liar. He's like, no, I swear, like you guys are going to kick me out of power. I don't want to be out of power. Nah, no, you're lying. So I think that our intel apparatus was so bad at that point that we probably didn't know. And all the way up to that point, Saddam Hussein was saying, I have these chemical weapons. I have these weapons of mass destruction. He created a nuclear power plant. I don't know if it's nuclear power, but a nuclear site. It was Kop Kash, south of Baghdad. The Israelis bombed it, I think, in 1988. Saddam Hussein spent his entire life in power essentially being the guy at the 7-Eleven that had his hand in his shirt and was like, stick him up, right?
Fucking peacock feathers.
All right. So at the end of the day, like, do you assume that that's not a gun or do you assume it is a gun? Everybody assumed it was a gun. He said, okay, guys, it's not a gun. And then we went in anyway. So I mean, he kind of asked for it to a certain extent. I don't think there was malice in us going in there. Well, there was malice, but I think that everybody assumed, even the other intelligence agencies, that he had these and that we were going to go in and we were going to find them. But it still doesn't mean that it's not a waste of life and money, and like every soldier who left a kid or a wife, or like, it was not worth it.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck who you are. I would turn that entire place into glass to get those soldiers back.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any element of George W. Bush wanting to finish what his dad started and didn't accomplish? Do you think that that made or played any role in his decision to send us there?
I don't think he's smart enough.
Yeah, not a fan of him, I take it.
Well, I mean, I don't dislike him, but at the end of the day, I don't think that. Right, Saddam Hussein supposedly was going to try to assassinate Bush Sr., and people are saying that that's why. People were saying, oh, it's only about oil. Now, look, if they didn't have oil, we wouldn't have gone in there. Let's be honest. Like, they have a huge natural resource, and the global market for oil is absolutely global. So if this was in Nigeria where they didn't have any natural resources.
Well, Nigeria has a fuck ton of oil and natural gas. But we'll say South Africa.
There you go, South Africa.
Somebody will comment, they have diamonds, you fuckface, or whatever. There's something everywhere, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I think that he looked at the strategic, like, hey, they do have this resource, and I do have a reason, and we're going to go in and we're going to do it.
Yeah. I guess, playing devil's advocate, I mean, there are the Somalias, the other parts of the world that we have gotten involved in that don't have natural resources that maybe we have a direct interest in.
Yeah, but not on that scale.
No.
Let's be honest, like the scale of that war.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing really to even compare it to. I mean, other than Afghanistan, but that's a totally different
but even
thing.
Afghanistan, we had 15,000 people in Afghanistan when we had hundreds of thousands in Iraq.
Yeah.
And then once we left Iraq, we surged in Afghanistan. I think we got it up to 80,000 or something. But like the scale of that invasion was so much bigger than the Black Hawk Down stuff. I mean, going all the way back to Vietnam, absolutely nothing of that scale.
Yeah.
You can say Desert Storm, but that was like, I think it was 4 minutes.
Yeah. No, for sure. So your rear view says it was a huge mistake. You'd wipe the country off the map before you would do it again.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you got ready to leave, you mentioned that you got fired.
The second time.
Yeah, what did you get fired for?
This was one of those drunken parties up in Kirkuk. So it was my going away party. I hadn't been drinking for like 2 months before that, but they're like, oh, Morgan, you're leaving tomorrow. Come on out. And I was like, no, I don't really want to come out. And I come out and, oh, you convinced me. Like, it was really hard to convince. So I was drinking some beers, and then somebody handed me a bottle of vodka, and it had like that much at the bottom of it. It was way too much to chug, but I did it anyway. And then I blacked out. And supposedly what happened is I went to go take a leak in the embassy, and then I punched out the mirror in the bathroom. I don't know if this actually happened, but I did pull out glass from my knuckles the next day, so I'm pretty sure it did. I want to say like I ripped the sink off and maybe kicked the toilet a little bit, but I probably didn't even do that. So I was flying back to Baghdad that night or that day, got down to Baghdad, and then it was Christmas break. So none of the Blackwater guys at the head shed back here were around. So after Christmas, I was in Jordan, and the head of Blackwater in Iraq called and was like, hey, you're not invited back. And I was like, well, I didn't have a contract anyway. So was a mutual decoupling, as Gwyneth Paltrow would have said.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got back, I got back into college because I was like, I got to have something to transition out of this. So I'm back in college. I got this fucking amazing dog that like just stole my heart, and I had no idea dogs could do this. Like, just stole my heart. And I was pretty sure I was going to go back to contracting at some point. And when you're in that community, people will literally reach out and say, hey, I got a gig here, I got a gig there. I know I talked to Triple Canopy at one point, and finally I was like, I either need to like contract for the rest of my life until I die, or I need to like move on from this. So that's when I joined the Army ROTC. Wanted to fly helicopters, and then the Army was like, hey, that's a 7.5-year contract. I was like, I don't want to fly them that bad, dude. That's a long damn time. So I went Intel and ended up like the best thing that ever happened to me. Met my wife at Intel school. She's absolutely amazing.
Also an Army Intel officer?
Yeah. Way hotter than me. Just absolute smoke show, intelligent, like everything. She grew up in every way that I didn't as a child, right? Like, she knew she was going to go to college. She had like a stable family. Yeah, she was. Yeah, she didn't have a wiener. That helped. But I did not like my time in the Army. I couldn't have met, like, going from Blackwater to the bureaucracy of being a military officer.
It's pretty much polar opposite.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be an officer this time. Maybe I can affect change. And you get in as a butter bar. I remember we were out in the field like the first week I got to Fort Lewis. And I took my kit out there, and I like to have my Mitch helmet like set up in a certain way. And I had it set up, and I walked out to go to some kind of BS officer meeting. I came back in, and like this E7 had moved all my shit around. And they didn't tell me, and I went to grab my helmet, and I was like, who fucked with my shit? And they were like, oh, sir, you had your pad in wrong. You had this pad, it needs to be on the top, and you had it on the front. And I was like, don't fuck with my shit, dude.
Yeah, I know how I want my stuff.
Yeah, like, I mean, they had no idea I was prior enlisted or I worked for Blackwater or any of that stuff. But
did you ever tell them?
Yeah, I ended up telling them later, but I was like, don't fuck with my kit. Like, I do my shit the way I do my shit. And then the next morning I woke up, and it rains in Lewis all the time. There's this little puddle. I went out there with my razor, and I was like shaving and, like in the puddle, like straight up Terminator style, not Terminator, Predator style. Oh, yeah. Like, yeah. But like, that's what you do. You wake up and you shave, and everybody's like, fuck, that new LT's hardcore. And I was like, you guys don't shave? You guys don't shave in the field? I'm like, what the hell am I get myself into?
Yeah. So with that, I mean, you ended up going back to Iraq as a intel officer, right?
Yeah, they put me at the same base. This is how you know there's a God, and he's got a sense of humor. They put me at the same base that I would have run to in Iraq. It's where Saddam Hussein was hanged, JSS Justice. And I was making like $85,000 a year, watching contractors come through the gate, making $200,000 a year. And I was like, fuck, what did I do? Yeah.
And you have to shave, and you don't get to party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Any memorable experiences other than kind of the irony as you sat there watching? Anything that's worth sharing from your time there, or was it pretty benign?
It was pretty benign, right? 09 and 10 is when we were starting to leave, like all the ground forces were leaving essentially. What I did do is I grabbed all my soldiers one night, and we played near beer pong. Remember that near beer they have over in Iraq? It tastes like piss.
Yeah, it probably is piss.
Yeah. And I would know.
Yeah, you would know. A connoisseur of piss.
So I grabbed all my soldiers and was like, come on, guys, we're going to play near beer pong. And we're like out there at the ping pong table, like playing near beer pong. Like it was so calm. Like when I compare it to like 04, it was just so different. They were just waiting for us to leave, right?
Well, so that's interesting. So, I mean, as an intel guy, I mean, I know that there's certain things that you can't share, but, kind of overall, what was the intelligence at that time of things that you were at least to be worried about or to look out for or whatever? Like, what was the vibe of the country trying to do at that point from an intel standpoint?
I mean, from our standpoint, it was really targeting operations. The hardest part was if you targeted somebody, would anybody give a shit? And even if you went and you caught somebody, right? Everybody wants to say like, No, I wasn't a Navy SEAL, but I supported them.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was essentially the jockstrap of special operations.
We supported special forces. So we legitimately supported special forces with our intel stuff.
Yeah.
So they would go, they would do a raid, they'd bring their intel stuff to us. We would do all the like sensitive site exploitation, electronics. We'd feed them back intel. So you could target these people. You never knew if they were actually going to be like captured or if there was going to be a mission that happened, but that was it. It was just really pockets of like special operations that were like, before we leave, we want that dude.
And in terms of the targeting, that this was pre-ISIS. Like, was ISIS even a thing yet at that point? Like, that was never. I mean, obviously they existed, but not on your guys' radar.
No, not at all. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they were on any. Well, they were on the radar, but they were the JV team, right? Obama said. Yeah. So, and I was in Baghdad, right? They were up in North Mosul, but nothing. It was.
So the in terms of organization of who you guys were targeting, was it all still Al Qaeda and affiliates?
Yeah, it was all like I mean, I don't even know how much we did Al Qaeda, right? Because it was probably mostly just like the Shia-backed Iranian-backed Shias that were still kind of wreaking havoc in.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was the primary.
Yeah, because I mean, Al Qaeda. We can sit there and blame it on Al Qaeda, but for the most part, everything that was bad came from Iran.
Really?
And that all goes back to like 04, 05 when they started getting EFPs instead of just regular IEDs. Like, those were the people that we were still targeting.
So I mean, it's interesting because from a narrative standpoint, media wise, we'll say pop culture wise, for lack of better terms, obviously nothing to do with entertainment, but kind of the overall consensus of understanding, even amongst military folks that weren't necessarily knee deep in it from an intel standpoint, at least from my recollection, we were still talking about Al Qaeda, Zarqawi, Osama bin Laden's, and it's too similar of a fucking name. It's not a slip. But it was still like, that was really still kind of the focus. It was like, that's what was being painted as the brush of terrorism and insurgency, was this Al Qaeda philosophy that was, embedded in the local populace. There were foreign fighters coming in. From your experience and the intel side, you're saying it was still primarily that entire time, or a lot of it was still mostly coming from Iran?
Yeah, I would say that even in Afghanistan, right, we went in there, we wanted to fight Al Qaeda, and then we did a pretty goddamn good job. So who'd we fight next? The Taliban. Yeah. But everybody was still Al Qaeda, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're doing the broad brush, it's always Al Qaeda. But it was the Taliban. Same thing in Iraq. It was Al Qaeda. And yes, there were pockets of it, but throughout the history of Iraq, it was a lot. There were foreign fighters that came in, like Uzbekis, you name it. They were over there to wage the holy war. But it really was those Shias that were backed by Iran. I mean, those were always going to be your biggest threat.
Yeah. I mean, so I would ask then, do you have a perspective or philosophy on why that wasn't more prominent publicly? Because people don't want to differentiate between, like, if you create a boogeyman, you're not going to say, oh,
it's
a different boogeyman.
Yeah, this is the boogeyman's brother. Let's like start saying it's him, right? And you see this with, remember it was ISIS, right? And then it was ISIL, right?
Right.
And everybody's like, what the fuck is ISIL? And it never caught on, but like technically it was ISIL, like whatever, of the Levant instead of ISIS.
Yeah. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with that. That to me, I would make a significant distinction though with ISIS-K, ISIL, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Taliban. Those are all insurgency or extremist terrorism groups that aren't an actual state with territory. They're fluid, kind of like sexuality in America these days. Iran isn't. They are a fucking an absolute state. That's verified, that has borders, that has a government, that that has a long history, has a shit ton of money. Like there's infrastructure there. They're not moving around. Yet, like, yes, they support Hezbollah and Hamas and ISIS and fucking you name it. But to me, like, if I was the minister of information or misinformation, Baghdad Bob or whatever. Like if I'm the American propaganda machine, to me it would make more sense to say the truth, which is actually Iran is primarily, the boogeyman here, and they have been the whole fucking time. Like we're talking about ISIS, and yeah, they play a role, and there's pockets of them, but Iran is by far the biggest problem here, and we need to focus on them. I'm curious, in hearing you talk about it, like why the fuck wasn't that more of a prominent message delivered by the U.S. government? Because there's an actual face you can put on it.
Yeah, well, so to your point, it was Iran that was funding and training and giving weapons to these people, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it was the people in Iraq, whether you name it. Iran is filtering the cash to them. If I wanted to just take a reason off the top of my head why you wouldn't say it was Iran, is because public opinion at the time where we were in Afghanistan, in Iraq, if you started saying the boogeyman's really Iran, the war drums would have started beating, and there was no public, there was not enough public support for us to go into Iran and do the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have put the Iranian face on it myself. From a political view, I'm not going to do that. But
yeah.
I mean, all those weapons, all those munitions were coming in from Iran, because who's the biggest trading partner of Iraq? It's Iran, by far. Where do they get their fruit? Where do they get their vegetables? Where do they get all the shit that they're getting? It's coming from Iran. It's not like Kuwait's not growing a bunch of oranges and sending them up to Baghdad.
Yeah, I guess just me thinking of it, if I was the one making the call, I would. Just because ISIS, Al Qaeda, all these factions that are offshoots, and they, morph into something else and join and whatever. Like they're still gray men, and maybe that's the appeal, is that they can make it more of a boogeyman by saying that it's Al Qaeda or it's whatever made up fucking weird new term of some insurgency that has some hardline religious position on something. But to me, like if Iran is behind all of it, it's like, hey, we went in here because they were funded. Like I would try to connect those dots, even if you're not going in there, at least identifying of saying these are the bad guys, to help warrant whether it's sanctions or trying to starve them out and cut off fucking supply lines, or devaluing their currency. Whatever. To me it seems like a more intelligent way to go about it in the long term is to call a fucking spade a spade. I don't know, but
well, who's supporting Iran though? Then you have to go to Russia. You got to go to China that are actually giving them the technology, the material, the stuff. I mean,
but we talk shit about them all the time. Like we're fighting. How much money are we giving to Ukraine to fight Russia? And same with China. Like, how many politicians say China is our biggest threat? And I agree, they probably are. There's no shortage of people willing to call that out now.
Right.
And for that matter, like we're playing a way more active role in technically fighting Russia than we would have by bombing the fuck out of Iran back, 10 years ago. So obviously we're willing to get involved with them, and whether it's China over Taiwan or Russia and Ukraine, like to me we're flirting with disaster way harder now than we would have back then by fucking with Iran.
Oh, I agree.
But
yeah.
All right, so you spent a couple of years, went to Iraq a few times. Ultimately, you decided to get out. What was you just hated it?
Yeah, it was. I got out of the Army because I knew I wasn't going to like it when I started. And I was right. Like it was
not depressing. I know I'm going to hate this shit. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, well, it was like, 07 is when I got the housing bust was going on. I was talking to so many kids in college that were like, yeah, I just got my degree in criminal justice and sociology, and I'm going to go to this job over at Home Depot, right? Like it wasn't this robust. And what the hell am I going to do? I got a college degree in criminal justice. I don't want to be a cop. I know that.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you do at that point? You kind of always fall back on what you've done in the past that you're comfortable with. Try to take that next step forward, but you're going to fall back on it. So, joining the Army was I wouldn't say it was a natural progression by any stretch of the imagination, but I was like, this is what's going to get me to my next step, which ultimately was I wanted to go work for the CIA. I thought that'd be pretty cool. So
even after having met them and worked with them a little bit in Iraq.
Yeah, they still had this aura of them. And then get in the Army. I meet my amazing wife. I'm like, I can't go into the CIA, and like I still plan on going to the CIA, but she wanted to have kids, and I went to Tufts University for my graduate degree. Very very snooty up there, and we went to DC. I was like, dude, I could never live in DC. I just can't do it. So I finally switched over to the business track and started looking for jobs outside of like the government work stuff, and kind of just found my way in life. You know, 2 freaking amazing kids, an amazing wife. You know,
is she still in the Army?
No. We got out kind of at the same time and washed.
It's like
our
we
hands.
are pregnant.
Yes.
We got out of the military.
We were very pregnant. Well, so because I did a little time in the National Guard, and she did the rest of her time in the National Guard, and we were just like, we gotta go. Like, that doesn't stop them from calling you every once in a while.
Still?
Yeah, it's like, hey,
Really?
hey, Morgan, I know you resigned your commission and you got like all the way out, but
I have an incredible business opportunity.
yeah, it's like no thanks, man. I gotta be out.
Yeah. So what now? I guess. I mean, obviously you have the job, the kids. Is your wife stay-at-home mom, or is she doing something?
No, she works. I mean, she's like the perfect woman.
Yeah. Can you say what she does, or would you rather not?
I mean, she uses her Intel background to do like the same kind of stuff for analytics on the corporate side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, huh?
There is so much fraud in everything that involves the government. You would be absolutely shocked. And there's fraud in everything, right? Anytime that somebody else is going to pay the bill, there's fraud in it. Insurance, it doesn't matter if it's your car, your house, if it's medical, there's so much fraud. There's it's a game of cat and mouse, right? You start identifying fraud, then you start creating these checks and balances to try to mitigate it. They find a way around it.
Or the people that are doing the checks and balances are dirty.
Yeah.
You know, and then, it's a wild ride for sure. Do you have a 10-year plan? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, do you just want to keep doing what you're doing, or is there anything else that you want to do?
No, this is like, I'm surprised I'm still alive here.
Yeah.
I feel at this point that I have exceeded what anybody expected of me at this point, so I may as well just quit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when I got into corporate America, I had this idea that I wanted to go and kind of climb the corporate chain, and then you get into it and you realize there's a lot of travel. There's a lot of like things that take you away from your family. And, you know, I'm not talking shit about my deadbeat dad who's dead, and I hope he's in hell. But like
That's not talking shit?
Oh, no, that was the nice way to say it. But I get to watch my kids grow up.
Yeah.
Like that is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like watching I even got it on video, my son's first steps. My daughter hit a hole-in-one the other day while we were golfing.
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
I hate her guts for it because I've never done it, but like it's just awesome to watch. And it's not all like puppy dogs and ice cream, right? We still have to argue about them putting on a belt in the morning, but like watching my kids grow up is probably the coolest thing that I get to do.
Yeah.
And,
sorry, go ahead.
No, and if I get to do that for like the next 10 years, then at that point I can say, hey, do I want to do something else? Do I want, like, I dabble, I write, I'm kind of halfway through a second book, a little over halfway through a second book. That
Do you have a title for it? Working title?
Well, I had one until a very sage man that's sitting over there, you probably can't see, told me how stupid I am and it doesn't work. But
we'll bring, so we have a former guest sitting in the studio. We're going to bring him in for the Patreon content, but Scott's over there. So he talked you out of the title? Yeah,
so I was calling it circuit breakers because you overload a circuit and it pops, right? The circuit breaker pops. And here's what I hate is I hate when people say that the suicide pandemic of the U.S. military is because they joined the military or they served in Iraq or they served in Afghanistan. You have 18 to 22 years plus of that person being raised before they join the military. And there's all these variables that go into that. They join the military, and then when they leave, there's all these variables that go into that. And I've seen some of the smartest individuals end up killing themselves because they can't figure out how to cope. And I've seen some of the dumbest people on the planet that just kind of float around like a turd afterwards, right? So what causes that? I want to open up a larger conversation to say Stop blaming it on this one thing, this Afghanistan deployment, this Iraq deployment, this I joined the military, and start looking at it more holistically to say, what did they have going on before they went into the military? What do they have going on after they went into military? And what is causing this? Like, can we find commonality in this to be able to combat it instead of just saying, oh yeah, that guy was in Kuwait in 2009, so yeah, he killed himself. It's bullshit.
Do you have a kind of a single point answer as to why you think that's the case?
I don't. I honestly just want to open up the conversation so that it's no longer the scapegoat, right?
Yeah.
So kind of taking the same, like different backgrounds, putting him in the same situation, and then sending him back out into their life the way the military does, and say, like, why did this person make it out and not that person? Now, I do think that there is a culture within the military, a drinking culture, a tough it out, like don't ask for help culture, and it's getting better. But like when I got back from Blackwater in late 05, early 06, there was no PTSD. Nobody talked about that. There's nobody that's talking about like how you go to your first unit and the first thing you do is just drink yourself stupid.
Yeah.
Or how you can go in at 18 and not actually have to grow up and retire at the age of like 40, and you can still be that same 18-year-old mentality. Like it's just too complex to sit there and say, this is the one part.
I agree the complexities are there, but I actually do think I have a pseudo theory on as to the why, and I think the biggest single determining factor is a lack of purpose. I think, the word trauma gets thrown around a lot nowadays, and I think the reason for it is that it's a pretty vague. If you look at the actual definition of it, I mean, it's essentially something that's negative that happens to you to the point of where it causes, like either a panic state of mind or something that's that significant. Zach, maybe you can look up trauma for us real quick, but the catch is that while you're basically unable to do anything about it, right, is so that it makes you feel like a victim. And so to me, if you look at the overall arch of suicide and how much more prevalent it is in our society, it's not just specific to the U.S. military, is that all human beings have traumatic things that happen to them. But I think the combination of we're a victim of our own success societally is that things are so easy, right, is that we have this good and bad problem of technology being so amazing, and even though our food chain is fucked up as far as how bad the food is, which is part of it, is that a lot of kids are eating things that aren't even food and that are counterproductive to brain development and things. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but it's connected. But the reality of it is that the bulk majority of the day today compared to even say 200 years ago is vastly different. 200 years ago, 90% of Americans were farmers. Philadelphia was the biggest city in the country. It had 40,000 people. So overwhelmingly, most people's day to day was getting water, taking care of their food. It was gathering food and just surviving. So you didn't have time to perceive problems. You had enough of them just trying to stay alive. So that's the first part. Now there's none of that. So human beings are designed to struggle. So if you don't have that, like your mind in the human condition will create reasons to be fucking worried about something and something to struggle with. That's why you see so many social justice warriors, is they need something to fucking get behind, to be passionate about, to feel alive. So now you put somebody that grew up that way in a traumatic fucking holy shit environment, and then they come back from it. And I've interviewed a lot of people that some of them have had a lot of trouble and some of them haven't. And the one common denominator I see with all of the people that seem to do okay, no matter what they've been through, is that they have something that they're doing right now that gets them out of bed in the morning, that they fucking love doing, that they're passionate about. They have a purpose. They have an identity that's not just what they used to do. The people that struggle are the guys that they don't know what the fuck they want to do. And so they end up at the bottom of a fucking bottle of alcohol or pain pills or whatever, is because they don't have a fucking purpose. And I think when you wrap all of those things together, that's the biggest reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. Because how many guys have you seen that have been through some of the worst, most traumatic shit in the world that are just crushing it as an entrepreneur now? and you would never know that they've been through the things that they've been through, but then you also see guys that kill themselves,
Right.
And years leading up to that are just absolute train wrecks of an experience, just, one thing after the next of just going through horrible shit and not being able to deal with it. And that's the one common denominator that I've seen is that purpose thing plays such a huge role. It gives people a reason to give a shit.
Well, and I think it's hard for people to go from having the purpose you have when you join the military. I'm an American fighting in the forces which guard our country and my way of life. I'm prepared to give my life in their defense. That is some serious purpose. 18, 22, doesn't matter. And then finding that new purpose, I think a lot of people want to match that, whereas the people that do better say, hey, I either am not going to be able to match that or I'm going to exceed it and do it. Entrepreneurs, the people that do well in business. So I agree to your purpose point. I do feel like there's become like a platitude for military members now that says, oh, you have to go find your purpose without actually like directing people. Like my purpose right now is raising my kids.
Yeah. Well, to me, I don't think it matters what it is.
Yeah.
It just, to me, you have to have the same level of give a shit that you did in the military for whatever it is. I don't care if it's raising kids, if it's owning a business, if it's fucking gardening, whatever, being a pastor, you name it. Like, to me, it doesn't matter what it is. It just, to me, the only thing that matters is that the level of wanting to do it is at least in a similar level caliber wise as joining the military.
Maybe I should start the Pea Drinkers Association.
I would.
Yeah, just like that'll be my new passion in life and be like, if you've drank your whiz,
you can be in the club.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, I say do it. Yeah.
I will say, so if anybody's watching this or listening to this, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. There's something called the Defense Base Act. It's been back since like World War II. If they send civilians into combat zones, there is an insurance policy that is written against them. And it's through the Department of Labor. And there are lawyers out there that will help you get compensated. So if you have PTSD, if you were injured overseas as a contractor, it doesn't matter if you were KBR washing laundry or if you were a Blackwater dude bonsaiing down the street. There is at least that option of having like a payout that could help you out in the future. So please reach out to me. I can get you hooked into like the different legal firms that I've used to do it.
Yeah.
Don't just leave like free money on the table because you went over there. You probably have scars from it. And by God, nobody's going to say no to like $3 extra in their pocket. So reach out.
Absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. And Guns, Girls, and Greed is the book. Lots of hooker stories and all sorts of stuff in there. I encourage you guys to check it out. Thank you for coming and sharing your story, man. I appreciate it.
No, you're awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Anything else you want to bring up before we give you your parting gifts here as a guest?
Well, besides the Pea Drinkers Association,
I think we're going to drink some piss after this.
Thank you so much, man.
John Johnston and Champion Choice Silver, who makes those buckles. John donates them to all guests. Scott, did you get one of those when you were here? We're going to hook you up since you were a guest. That way you have one also. But feel free to pop that open and show the camera if you don't mind. So you can, get on your shit kickers, which Scott's already rocking them, but we'll get you one as well. And
Champion Choice Silver, like go support this dude. This thing is freaking
family-owned business here in Texas. They make phenomenal buckles. They make them for all sorts of applications, primarily kind of the rodeo and Western culture scene, but they do it for a lot of stuff. So I don't care how you see this. It doesn't do it justice. This is awesome. A work of art, man. Yeah, they do a great
much.
job. Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I encourage you to go check out the book. If you didn't enjoy it, you get to choke yourself while you drink your own piss. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.